Good evening, everybody. Before we officially get started, I'd like to remind the public that if you would like to address the board during open forum, there are some yellow sheets outside, and if there's not any, go ahead and let Ms. Delgado know. She's our administrative assistant at the end. You do need to fill those out and turn them into her so that you can address the board during open forum, okay? With that being said, I now call this Gadsden Independent School District Regular School Board meeting to order for Thursday, September 22nd, 2022 at 5:03 p.m. Ms. Delgado, can you please take roll call?
Mr. Cano? Mr. Castillo? Ms. Flores?
Present.
Ms. Murillo?
Present.
Ms. Rodriguez?
Present.
Madam President, we have established quorum.
Thank you, Ms. Delgado. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and salute to the New Mexican flag. Thank you.
Ms. Avila, will you
That is correct. I
recognize,
apologize, Ms. Avila.
recognize your students, please?
Yes, at this time, the two students who will lead us in the pledge and the salute to the flag are Sophia Chumley and Sahara Kent. Would you please come up, ladies?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I salute the flag of the state of New Mexico, the Zia symbol of perfect friendship among united cultures.
We also have Miss Alyssa Miller, who will sing the national anthem for us.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we held at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave over the land of the free and the home of the brave?
So good evening, President Salazar Flores, members of the board, and Superintendent Dempsey. We welcome you to Chaparral Middle School, and this evening we have a video presentation for you to highlight our new marketing and career exploration class that falls under the career and technical education. This class was made possible with our family income index that we were awarded last year through the New Mexico Public Education Department, and it is so far off to a great start, and they are doing amazing work. So at this time, I would like to introduce Ms. Lozano, who is our teacher who is running this, and also Ms. Garcia, Amy Garcia. Okay, and then we have our students here that are working on, some of our students that are working on it. So please stand up.
Hi. Okay. So our program, we named it Knight's Armor. Our students get hands-on experience in designing, producing and printing for customers, as you could tell. Our students also learn how to take orders, pre-production, produce custom orders, create invoices, take inventory, and other aspects of running a business. They learn how to work Cricut Design Space. That's the software we use with the Cricut smart machines, the cutting machines. Screen printing, which is creating a stencil on a mesh screen, then pushing ink to create an imprint to design on the surface below, and sublimation. Our students gain experience in creative problem solving, collecting money. This class provides the students with many essential skills that are needed in a career. And now we will show you the video. Thank you.
My name is Amy Ramirez. I am in the 8th grade. I am in marketing class. I really think that this class helps us a lot for the future because it helps us feel like for jobs, how to deal with money, how to receive like orders and stuff. And it also helps us work in a group, like with our little community, because it helps us learn new stuff about each other and how to work as a group. And each day we learn different stuff. Like we learn reading, we learn how to make shirts, stickers for our school, to support our school, and they also show us how to learn. We learn a lot about friendship because we get to help one another and show each other different stuff every day. And another thing is that all of us in that class are responsible, and thanks to our teachers, we learn how to be responsible with ourselves.
Thank you, and the gifts that you see in front of you are a part of our class as well, from the students and teachers.
Moving on now to item 3 of our agenda, Superintendent Dempsey's district updates and recognition. Superintendent Dempsey. I am so sorry, I skipped that. Yes, thank you, Ms. Rodriguez. So, Ms. Rodriguez, can you please read our mission statement?
The Gadsden Independent School District will provide diverse educational opportunities that empower students to be successful in an ever-changing world. El Distrito Escolar Independiente de Gadsden brindará diversas oportunidades educativas que capacitarán a los estudiantes para tener éxito en el mundo cambiante.
Thank you, Ms. Rodriguez. Okay, now for our district updates, Superintendent Dempsey.
Madam President, welcome. Thank you, board members, for this opportunity. Ms. Avila, thank you very much for the presentation. I will mention Ms. Avila was very determined to get this project implemented. And while I don't know if everybody saw the vision, I think tonight everybody sees the vision. So thank you for your determination and hard work in making this happen. And congratulations, students. Looks amazing. Impressive. Our first item is a little bit of a tough one. You know, we get to, students that are here, I love having students here because what our students sometimes don't realize is the motivation and joy that we as adults, you actually can drive us, right, and make us want to be better by activities like this. And you know, recently we had a tragedy in the county, but I'm going to even say in our community because, you know, I can't imagine as a parent attending a football game, cheering for your child, and within a few hours they're in a hospital bed fighting for their life and then not actually surviving. And so we had a young man from Oregon Mountain High School who was on the football team, Abraham Romero. Just this week, the mayor of Las Cruces designated today as in honor of him as Abraham Romero Day. And we're all wearing blue to honor him and remember him. And I just want to pause just as a moment of silence to remind us how blessed we are to get to work with kids every day. Thank you for that. Ms. Avila, if you'll come back up, I think we have one of our middle school teams that deserves some recognition. We're a little dated on this recognition, but nonetheless. Now, I do need to check and make sure they're here, because I think some of them were coming from Alta Vista. So they're not here yet. So I tell you what, let's pause. I'll come back. Don't let me forget that one. We'll just pause for a minute, put a little note here, because we want to make sure those students get recognized. So Mr. Ortega, can you help us with item C, which is Law Enforcement Appreciation Night?
Can you hear me? There we go. All right, we'll try that again. Good evening, Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Dempsey. I'm here to provide you a status update on the Law Enforcement Appreciation Night. At this time, we are tentatively scheduled for the Law Enforcement Appreciation Night on Friday, October 28th, 2022, where it will be celebrated at the football game between Chaparral High School and Santa Teresa High School. This program, this appreciation is to celebrate the partnership and the reunification of our renewed working with our partners in our community. And one of the ways we show appreciation is to recognize them during a Friday night football game during the halftime festivities. So basically how this is going to be broken down is that all law enforcement and first responders will be invited to the football game, where they will be recognized during the halftime activities. Law enforcement and first responders will have free admission into the game along with their immediate families. Law enforcement and first responders will park their assigned emergency vehicles in a pre-designated area of the parking lot to showcase their law enforcement partnership and unity. So in essence, their presence, whether they're in uniform or in their marked unit, will show a unified coalition of partnership with Gadsden ISD and the local law enforcement community and first responders. Prior to the halftime activities, announcement will be made to the audience for all law enforcement and first responders to report to the south end of the football field, where they will be escorted to the 50-yard line, where there will be a table waiting for them that will be draped with, of course, Gadsden and law enforcement regalia, where they will be recognized and re-emphasizing our declaration of our working partnership with our law enforcement and first responders. Okay, and of course, we will provide the table where we have a draft, where it will be a symbolic symbol, where we'll have the first responders, the law enforcement who participate in this program or that night to sign their names as a declaration on behalf of their agency. Law enforcement and first responders will be assembled on the 50-yard line, and of course, declaring their mutual support of which time and announcement, at which time the announcement will be made to the audience, recognizing all current and retired law enforcement and first responders, where they will stand and be recognized by the community for their thoughtfulness service to our school community and for their chosen profession. We have contacted 11 law enforcement and first responder agencies across Doña County and that wish to participate in this endeavor. As of this date, we have one confirmation, which would be Doña County, said that they will participate. I feel very confident that the other agencies will also participate. It's just only a matter of time before I get an email confirmation, as they have to go through their chain of command in order to get to approval on it. And again, we're just currently awaiting on the confirmation of those 11, well, actually 10 of the 11 agencies that we've contacted. And of course, the first responders also include the local and county fire departments, fire marshals, anything that pertains to law enforcement. We're all contacted by our department to wish to participate in this program. And I stand for questions.
Any questions, comments, or concerns? No, we just really appreciate that we're going to have that event. Looking forward to attending that. So thank you, sir.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ortega. Okay, next on our agenda is our student representative, and this evening I have Gideon Potts, who's a senior at Chaparral High School.
Testing? Okay. Sorry, okay. Hi, my name is Gideon. I'm the senior representative of Chaparral High School. And before I start, I just want to say that I'm very happy to be here. The school is as beautiful as ever. I wish I would stay here. Well, in some portions. And just I see some familiar faces, and I got a feeling of nostalgia. But other than that, let's get started. Okay. So for our school-wide announcements, we had an amazing pep rally to kick off the beginning of the school year. Students had a blast showing their school spirit. It's probably the best one we had in a couple of years, considering the pandemic. Very happy for that. Students are excited to have their first full-blown homecoming week of activities, games, challenges, and so many opportunities to make lasting memories. We start our festivities this week of October 3rd. We are also studying for the SAT and PSAT, fast approaching in late October. Sports. Volleyball season is in full swing. They have been giving their opponent a good match. Football. Our team has been working hard this season and building a stronger team. Soccer. The boys team has been doing really good, especially the JV team putting in great work. And lastly, we have cross country. Students have competed. I believe a student, Daniela Hernandez, won a medal. And they have a new coach. Clubs and organizations. We've had many new clubs this year thanks to our 21st Century Grant, with the addition of the board game dance club, Best Buddies Club, Spanish, DIMA, Craft Club, and Code Bots. Our garden club is currently in the works of building a garden in partnership with La Samia, white. And they are co-hosting Homecoming Week with Culinary Arts. All of our classes currently have a class sponsor for the first time. Well, at least the first time I've been here. I can't recall any time. But freshmen, sophomores, juniors, seniors all have a class sponsor. And we are excited in supporting our school. NHS Garden Club and the senior class have been lending a helping hand to the food drives at CHS and working hard to earn those community service hours. FCCLA and ProStart has opened the Lobo Den Bistro and are adding delicious lunch options for students and staff at the school, with takeout service for staff. OJT, or on-the-job training, has been experimenting with new tools, such as laser engravers to help students gain experience with tools and technology, and they've opened the print shop for teachers as well. And lastly, we want to give a special thanks to our Lobo band. They put in all the work at the pep rally, the football games. I think they got rained on one time, and we always appreciate them, and we want to let them know that they're appreciated here. And that'll be all. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Potts. We appreciate that. Board member report. Ms. Morillo, will you get us started?
Yes, good evening, everybody. Let me get close here. Thank you to Ms. Avila for your hospitality. Thank you for the gifts. You can see the work of the students, and that's amazing. Thank you to our student representative. I love your energy. That's awesome. Keeping us engaged. That's great. I attended the parent-teacher conference in Santa Teresa, and it was nice to see the participation with the parents and the students, and some of the students who were in the salsa eating contest. They were talking about how their parents, they were making the salsas, and one of the young ladies, she was promoting her mom and her business. So it was really nice to see like the sense of community. Congratulations to Mr. Cano. I hate losing, but he won third place. I also attended the coffee with the superintendent at La Unión on Tuesday, and congratulations, Mr. Sanchez. They had 117 children being recognized with perfect attendance. Not good at math, but Ms. Hernandez said it was 1/3 of the school, and I think that's awesome. I had a meeting with Jerry Pacheco. He is from the Border Industrial Association, and no wonder everybody wants to go to Santa Teresa and bring their business. It's amazing. I did a tour. He brought all these light shows about what's coming, and he was very specific. We have a building that is making millions and millions of gummy bears a day. On the other side of the border. And so there's great plans, and it was very exciting to see what's coming to our area. The partnership that we have with him is amazing. We are looking for volunteers, and I volunteer myself, and I kind of put a little bit of pressure on the board members. They don't know yet, but I'm going to put them on the spot. We need volunteers for the golf tournament. It is going to be November 4th. I think it's very important that the charitable foundation, they bring money to our school district, not because it says Santa Teresa Charitable Foundation, it means that it's to Santa Teresa. It's to the whole district. So I think that when we receive money, right, we need to give back to that association, and so what better way than to volunteer? So I will be one of those, and I will love to see my fellow board members helping me out that day. They are in need of a lot of help. Also, if any of you guys and in the audience, you guys have a business, a local business that are willing to donate for this cause, just remember it goes back to our students across the board. It's just not to a specific school. And very interesting, he said, we help every single elementary except Santa Teresa High School is not so much, or Santa Teresa Elementary, even though everybody thinks it's just for them, but it's not. It's for, they have help with Chaparral as well, and I think it's a really nice partnership that we have, and I look forward to work with him in other ways. And I think that concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Murillo. Mr. Cano?
Good evening, everyone. First, I want to thank Mr. Shrugs for letting me join the salsa contest. Honestly, I came up with it just like that in one day. I didn't really think I was going to get that far. And I thought, honestly, Ms. Murillo was going to beat me. But she didn't, so that's okay. All right, first of all, Ms. Avila, great work. I know how hard it is to try to make shirts and all that. I've tried it once. It's hard. It's hard. And I know that it's great that it's got to see. I hear my son's really excited because they're also just starting to get it done down there in Santa Teresa as well. And oh man, he's off to. It's the first time I've seen this boy get A's. And I'll be glad to join I'll take you up on that challenge. I'll go ahead and sign up for that golf tournament. And also, Chaparral, while I'm on the subject, I've been here for the past 3 weeks. Well, actually, my wife, I just joined her just so I won't be bored at home. With tablets, okay, government tablets. Remember, those government tablets are free, okay? Please do not get, if you go to that's fine if you go to other people that are selling them, but don't let them charge you. They are free. Activation is free. And I've heard since I've been here, I've gotten maybe about 10 customers saying that they were being charged $20, $30 just to add a phone line. And I know that these kids that are right here and all the kids in the middle schools, they already know how to add the phone to a tablet. Okay, don't be taken. I don't want anybody to be taken in and having to pay extra money, to get stuff like that. Not that I just want the business for myself, which I would love it, but you know what? I want everybody to be, and this goes to the whole district, okay? Because they're all over. They're at reunión, they're at Sunland Park, they're here in Chaparral, they're up in Mesquite, everywhere, and they're charging money for those tablets. Don't be taken in, okay? Don't be taken in, please. We'll be down here again Saturday from 12 to 3, and then we got a big shing-ding over there in Sunland Park in the evening. So come get your free tablets. My condolences will go up to Mr. Romero's family. I think it's hard to really lose, and and having the face to lose a child. We're here for our kids to bury us, not for us to be burying our kids. So my condolences goes out to the family. And I believe that's all I got for my report today. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cano. Ms. Rodriguez?
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Avila, and thank you, the presentation. What is being done here at the school is amazing, and I know that I would love to have taken something like this when I was in high school. I have a hobby of that, and I just barely got a little cricket. So I don't know that I can do much, but this is great. Gideon, thank you for your enthusiasm, and that's, every time that I see a student, that I hear a student speak with such energy, and seeing the students that were here earlier, and I know we're gonna be recognizing another group. It's amazing, and just know that that's what we're here for. I think we all work towards that goal so that our kids can have something where they're gonna be successful and where they enjoy what they're doing. I think that the work being done is excellent. I want to encourage the parents to please participate. You know, I like to attend the parent classes that are given, and I go to the ones over in Mesquite. And I was very excited to see more parents, and that's exactly what we need, because again, we need to all work together in order to make this function. So I encourage everyone to please attend those parent involvement classes. And on that note, I just want to briefly, let me go back a little bit. The parent-teacher conferences were very successful. I was so happy to hear the teachers, how they're really appreciating the trainings that they're receiving. And again, even though that it seems maybe tedious, it's really to be more acquainted with everything that's happening, right? So that professional development is not to give you a hard time, it's for you to become better and have that professional development. The word states it. So thank you. And so I wanted to briefly share with you that I had the opportunity to visit Washington, D.C. this weekend, and it was amazing. And I went with an international organization, and this organization really wants exactly what we're seeking. They want the parental involvement, they want the student leadership to be part of this. And so I'm excited because I thought I knew a lot, but I learned a whole lot more. We were blessed to be able to visit our senators, our state senators, and our representatives. So a shout out to, let's see, we had Brian Kennedy, Deputy Chief Staff from Congresswoman Yvette Harrell. We had Katie from, if I'm not mistaken, she's with Senator Lujan. And then we also had Michael Horenberg, and he's also with Congresswoman Yvette. And so I share this because not only was it something, an eye-opener for me, but for the other ones that attended. And I'm excited to say and happy to say that we have students that are currently employed with our representatives. And I know one very well, and I'm proud of what he's doing. And so seeing that, I don't want me to be up there seeing this, but I want our families. I want everyone from our community to be able to experience this. And above all, our students. I was able to see that there, it was from the whole United States. I talked to some kids from Chicago, and they were sophomores in high school, and for them to be able to speak to the lawmakers, it's something that is just very, very inspiring. And so again, I look forward to being able to provide something like that for our students, for our community, for our people, so that they can be able to be a part of that. And with that, I conclude my report.
Thank you, Ms. Rodriguez. Ms. Flores?
Once again, thank you for joining us online, and for those of you who are in the audience, thank you for joining us this evening. Thank you to the administration of Chaparral Middle School, Ms. Avila, Ms. de la Riva, quiero ponerte de, sorry. Robbie, I'm so sorry. And Mr. Owens, thank you so much for your hospitality, and it's wonderful, the delicious food. And then also thank you to our escorts and the beautiful faces that were smiling as we were coming in. It was awesome to see the kids, and then the football team, thank you so much. And then I do see, I think, a cheerleader back there. I met him at Saturday's game. He's back there. He's a cheerleader, right? Yeah. So hi, mijo. Remember me? Hi. So, it was awesome watching them. They were playing. Who were they playing? Se me olvidó. It's a middle school in Canutillo, and we won. Alderete. So it was awesome seeing the kids out there cheering. And Gideon, thank you for joining us this evening. A pleasure to see you once again. Let me see. I did want to thank you very much, Gadsden Independent School District, for taking the time to honor and remember our student at Las Cruces Public Schools. I am an employee for LCPS, and so I did at one point in my career teach at Oregon Mountain High School, formerly known as Oñate High School. So I just wanted, some of you are going to recognize this. It's a song, and so I'm not going to sing it to you, but I'm going to read it to you, and some of you are going to recognize it pretty soon who wrote these words, but it's called Gone Too Soon. So it says, like a comet blazing across the evening sky, gone too soon, like a rainbow fading in the twinkling of an eye, gone too soon, shiny and sparkly, and splendidly bright, here one day, gone one night, like the loss of sunlight on a cloudy afternoon, gone too soon, like a castle built upon a sandy beach, gone too soon, like a perfect flower that is beyond your reach, gone too soon, born to amuse, to inspire, to delight, and that's who Abraham Romero was, right? Here one day, gone one night, like a sunset, dying with the rising of the moon, gone too soon. So we know he's in a better place, and thank you very much, Gadsden Independent School District, for acknowledging our student at LCPS. Thank you so much. And my condolences to the Romero family. And then on a happier note, is once again, thank you, happy birthday to all our September babies. We're so glad you were born and you're part of the Gadsden Independent School District family, so happy birthday. Enjoy the rest of your birthday month. You got get like a week and a half so to continue and take advantage, have your friends and family take you out to dinner every night, ¿verdad? So enjoy the rest of your birthday month. And then let me see. And then I do want to remind the public to please go out and support all of our athletes during our fall sports in our middle schools and high schools. And then my last announcement is, as we've got like a month or so, well, a month and a half maybe, before the general election happens. So those of you who are 18 years old, make sure that you are registered to vote. And those of you who are registered to vote, you better go vote, because your voice matters. So just a reminder about that. And with that, I conclude my report.
Thank you, Ms. Flores. We need to loop back, and so Ms. Avila, will you help us recognize this group?
President Salazar Flores, members of the board, Superintendent Dempsey, it is with great pleasure that we are here this evening to recognize the MESA team and also Ms. Rina Viramontes, who is the sponsor for the MESA team. They went to nationals last year, and they placed first place again. I'm very and extremely proud of them, because this is the 4th time they placed first place in the nationals. So right now, I just want to say thank you to Ms. Rina Viramontes and the team, for their dedication, their hard work, and their passion, and the amount of hours that go into the MESA program. And you can see that it is evident that they are the national champions. So at this time, I'd like to introduce Ms. Rina Viramontes and the team.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen of the board and Superintendent Dempsey. My name is Jessica Lara. I'm a 9th grader at Chaparral High School. The theme for the 2021-2022 MESA USA National Engineering Design Competition was about designing for inequity in our community. Designing for inequity means designing to minimize or eliminate barriers to opportunities for success. For this project, students' teams will identify an individual or group who experience some type of inequity in their community. We will have to employ human-centered design practice to engineer a solution. We had to use a community-centered issue for this project. And now on to David Garcia for the problem explanation.
Hello, members of the board. Hello, I am David Garcia, and I'm a 9th grader at Alta Vista Early College High School. So after we found the theme of the competition, we began looking for inequities around our community. We quickly realized that part of our community faced a huge inequity. For example, our fire department is a volunteer fire department, which means that they have a slower response time than a paid fire department, taking almost double the time than a paid fire department to reach the fire site. This, combined with the fact that 70% of homes in Chaparral are mobile homes and that they burn 2.5 times faster than regular homes, create a great inequity. It is because of this that 6 mobile homes last year were burnt because our fire department could not reach them in time in order to prevent major damage. Now to Alessandra will tell you how the smart fire alarm works.
Hello, my name is Alessandro Marentes, and I'm a 9th grade student at Chaparral High School. So what I'm demonstrating right now is our product. So what does it do? So we have our smart fire alarm. So that's our smart fire alarm. It has 2 sensors that detects fires. One is the flame sensor to detect fire, the gas sensor to detect gas leaks in the house, a DHT 11 sensor, which is basically a temperature sensor, and 2 outputs on our device, the buzzer and LED. So what our product does, its main focus is the app. We have the Blink app that connects to phones, and it displays, what we show is the gas level, the temperature, and if a fire has been detected or not. So if we were to do gas, we're going to demonstrate using hand sanitizer. The gas level will rise up, as you show, and then it will send a blink notification saying gas detected in both English and Spanish. So we're going to use a lighter for our flame detection. As you can see, it detects the flame, and the warning LED will turn on, as well as the buzzer. And our free Blink app will send a push notification saying flame detected in both English and Spanish. It will also send a push notification to the fire department and with the home address, so the fire department will get there faster, and hopefully the home will get saved. Thank you. Now to Josue for our likings.
My name is Jose Salais. I am a 9th grader at Alta Vista Early College High School. And as we stand here in great honor, we are incredibly gracious to the board, to all the efforts put together by the MESA staff, to all the teams that competed in the 2022 MESA USA competition. Finally, we are thankful for our phenomenal advisor, Ms. Viramontes. Ever since the first day of the competition to the Nationals closing ceremony, the rush of excitement and the desire to achieve success has never exhausted. And that is why our team has been so thankful, because thanks to the MESA program, our work has been able to thrive. We are thankful for the astonishing experiences, gifts, and honors given to us in the competition. But there is one thing that I am exceptionally thankful for in the competition, and that's for all the love, care, and support from my team. I can't help but feel an ache in my heart when I think of everything that me, David, Jessica, Alessandro, and Ms. Viramontes have gone through to get this far. Finally, I am thankful to you for allowing me to express my gratitude to the most brilliant, dedicated, funny, and loving people I have ever met. MESA will always be a part of me. I will never forget this experience, and I thank God for it very much. Thank you for your time and attention, board members and Superintendent Dempsey.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen of the board, President Flores, and Superintendent Dempsey. I just would like to thank everybody for their support, from our administrators to our parents to the students for doing all of the work and taking all of the time that it takes to do all of this for their competition. As you can see, they got first place overall, but they also got first place in their technical interview, first in their prototype pitch, a marketing pitch to sell their product to the judges, and they got second in their design brief, and they got first in their poster, their academic poster. So this is the 4th year, like Ms. Avila said, that we've gone, well, this is the 5th year in a row that we've gone to nationals, and the 4th year in a row that we've gotten first place in nationals, competing against 11 middle school teams. So they've done a really good job. Gideon was actually part of one of the MESA USA teams too, and it really did help him, like Ms. Rodriguez said, you know, to be able to be a good speaker. I think this program really helps the kids to speak well and just do a lot of great things. So, thank you.
And I just wanted to take the time to thank you so much for your dedication to our community, Ms. Viramontes. And I finally got to meet her beautiful baby girl. No, it's Mesita, but she used to call her AKA Mesita. Her name is Aria. Did I get that correct? So congratulations on your baby daughter to you and Mr. Viramontes. And so maybe one day she can be part of CMS. We'll see what the future holds for Aria. But thank you so much for your dedication. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for all your hard work and for representing Chaparral. Thank you. Okay. I think that was it as far as our superintendent's report. So now we're going to move on to item 4, which is our human resource report. That does not require any action on the behalf of the board. That is posted for your public information. Okay, do I hear a motion for actually, we don't need to modify the agenda, so do I hear a motion?
Madam President, I'd like to make a motion that we accept the modified agenda.
Actually, to accept the agenda as is, correct?
To accept the agenda as is.
Okay, Mr. Cano has made a motion to accept the agenda as is. Superintendent Dempsey?
So recommend.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion passes. Moving on to number 6. Item 6 is, do I hear a motion for item 6A?
I'd like to make a motion to accept special board minutes for September 8 and regular.
Go ahead. Just say. No, A, just do A, I guess, for right now. So Ms. Rodriguez has made a motion to accept item 6A, our board meeting minutes for September 8, 2022. Superintendent Dempsey?
So recommend.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, motion passes. Do I hear another motion for item 6B?
I'll make a motion to accept regular school board minutes for September 8.
Okay, and you know what, I'm thrown off, but I realize why, because we did have a special, a meeting that day. So Mrs. Rodriguez has made a motion to accept our minutes for our regular school board meeting that took place September 8, 2022. Superintendent Dempsey?
So recommend.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion passes. Moving on to our consent agenda, do I hear a motion?
I make a motion to consent the agenda as is.
Mrs. Murillo has made a motion to accept the consent agenda as is. Superintendent Dempsey?
So recommend.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion passes. Moving on to open forum. Ms. Delgado, do we have any speakers this evening?
Madam President, there is for open forum.
Okay. Okay, so we do have one speaker this evening. Ms. Teresa Ortega, you can please approach the podium. And thank you for joining us this evening. And then let me just read our little disclosures. So, good evening, thank you for joining us. So, personal attacks upon board members, staff personnel, or other persons in attendance or absent by individuals who address the board are discouraged. Presenters are cautioned that statements or representations concerning others that convey an unjustly unfavorable impression may subject the presenter to civil action for defamation. Policies KE, KEB, KEC, and KED are provided by the board for disposition of legitimate complaints, including those involving individuals. And then, Ms. Ortega, before you begin, you do have 5 minutes to speak, and you've got it? Okay, thank you. You may begin.
Okay. Good afternoon, Madam President, school board members, and Superintendent Dempsey. Today I'm here speaking not just as a teacher, but as a parent. And I'm also speaking for several teachers at my department at Gadsden High School in the English department. Here I want to pause and let Ms. Legareta know that I'm going to say that I followed the chain of command before she became our principal. But I have followed the chain of command beginning with my department head to the school board president, and we have yet to receive an answer as to when our students will receive their English textbooks. I don't know about the rest of the textbooks of the rest of the school. We are primarily concerned with our English textbooks. These new textbooks, which are My Perspective, Savas, published by Savas, were adopted last school year, and we didn't receive them last year until almost the end of the fall semester. And here we are 1 week from the end of the first 9 weeks this fall semester, and we still don't have these consumables that are in our students' hands. At one point, I was told that that they are accessible online. which is great for some, but not for others. Today, we had very slow internet at the school. A lot of kids had trouble. It was dragging. So it's not always an easy thing to get into it. Also, it's hard for students. I don't know how many of you try to read on a Kindle. Hard for you to find your place when you're reading. And personally, as an English teacher, and I teach freshmen, I want to teach them to write with a pen and pencil so that they don't use spell check. Let them use their brain. And I want them to read from an actual book. And we don't have those. As a parent, I also want to know where my taxes are. I know that its monies are tight as far as this, but this is something that has already been paid for when they were adopted, and I want to know why can't we use them? Why are they still not in our students' hands? They were, like I said, they're in a warehouse, and the first thing I heard tonight. I have sent out emails, and I have not received an answer. Again, to Ms. Legareta, I apologize. This was before she was here, because she always does respond to my emails and talk to me in person. But yes, we're very concerned. We need those textbooks in our kids' hands. And as parents, we're paying for them. Where are they? And if the state is holding them up, then let's do something. Let's put pressure on the state. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ortega. Okay, moving on to action items. We have one this evening, physical plant district vehicle regulation brief and purpose. Superintendent Dempsey.
Madam President, board members, Ms. Cadena is going to help us with this item.
Good afternoon, President Flores, board members, Superintendent Dempsey. I brought before you last time for discussion the physical plant district vehicle regulation, and I bring before you for action for the use of district vehicles by physical plant supervisors after regular business hours and weekends and holidays. I stand for any questions.
Any questions, comments, or concern for Ms. Cadena regarding this action item tonight? No? Okay, so with that being said, do I hear a motion?
I'd like to make a motion to accept action item 9A, physical plant district vehicle regulation brief and purpose.
Okay, Ms. Rodriguez has made a motion to accept action item 9A. Superintendent Dempsey?
So recommend.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Okay, motion passes. Thank you, Ms. Cadena.
Thank you.
Okay, and then finally, moving on to, we have several discussion items this evening. So the first discussion item is item 10A, our Gadsden Independent School District Strategic Plan pertaining to the superintendent evaluation tool. Superintendent Dempsey.
Madam President, board members, Ms. Chavez, if I misspeak, please correct me, please join me. What I want to bring the board up to speed, we had a leadership team was able to sit with Mr. Chavez from Cooperative Educational Services and work through some possible templates that would align the superintendent's evaluation to the strategic plan. That took a little bit of time for us to get through that, and then as we started looking at the timeline that it might require in order to accomplish all those pieces, the suggestion was to actually consider having a work session with the board so that Ms. Burciaga and Ms. Chavez could walk through those evaluative processes and that really best practices. We're also going to have on the quarterly reports, so the leadership team will do a quarterly report regarding the strategic plan, and much of that information can easily be reflected in that superintendent evaluation. That doesn't mean you can't add to it, but a lot of the narrative should already be prepared if you choose to use it in that manner. Ms. Chavez, did I represent that correctly?
That is correct. Good afternoon, board member, our board president, Salazar Flores, members of the board, and Superintendent Dempsey. That is correct. Our brief meeting with Mr. Chavez did help us with trying to go ahead and align the strategic plan to the superintendent's evaluation. And yes, through where we were seeing some of the examples, it was suggested that we do a special board workshop just to go ahead and align those and to see what you're actually wanting to go ahead and evaluate the superintendent on. As a matter of fact, Ludia Martinez and Estrella Burciaga will actually be facilitating that workshop if it's something that we do need to go ahead and do.
And Madam President, Board, I think it's also important for everybody, and I just really feel like it's important to have this in the minutes. I'm really trying to do my very best to facilitate that, but also keep a distance from it, because we don't want that to ever be reflected that I, guided my own evaluation. That's not what we want to do here. And we want to recognize that the hope is this gets created permanently in Gadsden, so you're always tied to that strategic plan and accomplishing those district-wide goals for any superintendent. So we just want to bring that to your attention. I'll get you some dates, and we'll try to find some dates. It'll probably be a Saturday morning if that's possible, and we'll start looking for some dates. I'll shoot you a couple examples, and when we get one confirmed, we'll go ahead and get it advertised appropriately and plan for it.
Questions, comments, concerns? So I do. So I just wanted to make sure. So it is the purpose of the special meeting is for creating the tool that we'll be using for evaluating Superintendent Dempsey.
That is correct. We were shown quite a few examples of some other evaluations that we can go ahead and mimic here at Gadsden and tailor it to Gadsden for Superintendent Dempsey, but we just need to go ahead and see what kind of format you are looking for in order to evaluate. We actually want to go ahead and provide you some assistance with if moving the superintendent from one point to the next point, how are we going to go ahead and do that? I don't want the evaluation, or we're not looking for an evaluation just says this and you're not doing it. We just want something to say, great, this is where you're at, but this is where we need for you to go ahead and be at.
So what Mr. So obviously you had a meeting with Mr. David Chavez. Would he be present or no? Because he's already.
We can ask for his presence, but just with all the information that he provided, I do believe that Estrella Burciaga will be able to go ahead and facilitate that without Mr. Dempsey's present.
Madam President, board members, what you might do with that is maybe you consider having the workshop and working through it, and then give him the results of that, and let him take a look at it, and then he can probably make any adjustments or recommendations to you.
Okay. And then I just wanted to throw out there, since, we're talking about your evaluation, sir, the tool that we would use, but I would also just make the comment that as part of our strategic plan, eventually I'd like to, with the approval of my colleagues, is, not right now, but something to think about is also a self-evaluation of us as a board. Because I think that's also important to have, and for that to be a part of, from now on, from our district, not only to evaluate you, sir, or any future superintendent, but to evaluate ourselves and any future board member that would eventually, because we're not going to be here forever, so that would replace us.
And just looking at the information that Mr. Chavez provided to us, we were able to go ahead and go back to some of the current policies that we do have in place. You actually do have a self-evaluation on there, and at that time we can go ahead and start modifying that. Once we're all done, we'd like to go ahead and come back and actually align the changes that we made to our current policy, and that way we can use that for future superintendents. Not that Mr. Dempsey's going anywhere.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to discussion item 10B, district enrollment trends, planning for tomorrow. Superintendent Dempsey.
Madam President, board members, thank you for this opportunity. One of these slides, if we'll just go ahead and go to the next slide. We want to, you should have seen this slide before, and what it was a slide that we talked about pretty much the last 10 years. Now, these numbers were all based on the 120th day. So we haven't got to the 120th day. So I don't know what the number will be. But you see on the far right, today, 11,998 students. So you can see if you look over the last 10 years, that steady decline in enrollment. And we've had this conversation multiple times, but I think we're at a stage where we can look out and see the growth in pockets. It was mentioned earlier, the area around Santa Teresa and the work that's going up near the border industry area. We've talked about that possible growth. I'm going to tell you, I truly believe that much of that growth is occurring as we speak. There's some significant federal dollars now being invested in a highway that will connect the port of entry directly to McNutt, which will give them a little bit additional access, or maybe a faster access to I-10. So that's a lot of traffic going to come through our area, and it's a lot of industrial growth. Right now, if my understanding is, of all those facilities up on that mesa, there's no additional spaces available right now. So they're growing so fast they can't keep up with the growth. So with that said, I think we've had some conversation around that growth in pockets creates a little bit of a struggle for us. Because overall, we're based on, our budget's always based on enrollment. So we're declining in enrollment, but we're growing in pockets. So I would suggest or want the board to consider the idea that some of our facilities are not in the right spaces of growth. And so, next slide. What I might want the board to consider thinking about is I kind of broke this up into feeder patterns. One example is the Santa Teresa High School feeder pattern. And so, we have Southern Park Elementary. And what I did was identify the oldest facilities, because the older the facility is, the more we're going to have to make an investment significant to remodel a facility, right? So do we want to make that investment, or do we want to make some other decisions that could possibly allow us to combine some schools? So the closest schools to Sunland Park Elementary are Desert View and Riverside. Now you can see on Riverside, that one has 2 dates on it, construction dates. There's an original construction date and then a remodel date. So it was the most recent remodel that's significant at Riverside was 2002. But you can see the amount of space available in those schools, right? And so, when you recognize the number that's currently at Southern Park, and then realize that we have more than adequate space at the schools directly next to them. So that's one option, and I want you to think of these as options and proposals that can always be modified. But I do think we need to start getting very serious about making some decisions, because our next step, to be transparent, is to have community meetings and sit down with those communities and be very, very transparent and very open with them about what we're thinking about, okay? Next slide, Mr. Snowdy. The Gadsden High School feeder pattern, and there's 2 pieces of this part, this particular one. So Mesquite Elementary is our oldest facility there, and then near it are North Valley and Vado. And you can see, again, very similar, adequate space in those neighboring schools. One of the opportunities I might want us to think about as we do this is when we start thinking about attendance zones, try to utilize permanent land markings so people understand, the railroad track. That railroad track's not going to change, right, anytime soon. So if you're on one side, you go to this school. If you're on another side, you go to this school. Not all of our attendance zones are designated that way. They're just one street off or something of that nature, and that seems very confusing to families that move to our community, and they go, wait, I'm here? And it's a little, and I'm not sure why those occurred, but I think it's a good opportunity to maybe just a little, why it occurred, I can't answer that, but I would say let's try to utilize this opportunity and say, let's put something real permanent there so it makes sense to people, okay? Next proposal or option is part 2 of our Gadsden High School feeder pattern. So we have 4 schools pretty tightly around the Anthony area. So we have Loma Linda, and you see the date on that. Now we did just a little bit more recently do some HVAC work there, but that wasn't a major reconstruction. But you see the amount of space we have available at Anthony Elementary Gadsden Elementary and especially Berino and Anthony. Those two really new facilities have adequate space to do that. And again, now this one, we're really going to have to spend some time in attendance zones and make sure that we consider where we designate those zones, and also there is some growth in terms of subdivisions planned near the Anthony area. So we want to be thoughtful about that, but I want to put everything on the table and us be able to look at all options and then, come back to try to decide what we think is best. And then I think I have one more on there. This is a district-wide feeder. This one's a little bit, it's a little bit, probably a little difficult for some of you. Well, Mr. Casimas Flores, probably you might, you've been on the board several years, and I think there's probably a part of of opening Alta Vista, right? And I don't know what year that actually occurred. Probably 2017, maybe. No, because Alta Vista was housed at different areas, so it was prior to that. But I guess my point is, one of the things I do believe the district, and I see it, that there was an idea to put Alta Vista on a college campus. And I think that's where it belongs. But I really don't see DACC or NMSU actually going there. I really, honestly don't know if we can leverage that at this time. And knowing the factors we're dealing with in terms of security, in terms of, just a lot of factors there. It's a set of portables, and it worked temporarily, but I might suggest, another option. And I don't know how everybody's going to feel. This could be a little controversial, but it did strike me that Gadsden High School, look at what it was built for. 2,000 students. I can verify this. 16 classrooms at Gadsden High School right now are unused. That's more than Alta Vista has. And so I might want the board to consider that as a thought. Now, let me explain those pluses by that 2009 date. There were so many remodels, I couldn't have listed them all and kept it in that little box. So there was Gadsden High School was a ton of phases, and some of them date back to, maybe even 60s and 70s, maybe earlier than that, because we have the old English building that's there. But that might be a consideration, and I'm not saying this is what we do, but one option could be the old English building become the early college high school, and you would be right next to the science labs where they could access that science equipment. So those are things to, I wanted to put out in front of you and start having conversations about them. I will tell you, we will, without question, hear from community members probably that wouldn't be real happy with some of these plans. But I will tell you, as in terms of growth, if we're going to build elementary schools, for example, I do anticipate within the next 5 years the Santa Teresa area needing a new elementary school. I absolutely think that's going to happen. If you asked me today, Mr. Dempsey, can you build that facility? I can answer yes, I can build it. I do not have the money to staff it. That's the year-over-year expense I do not have the money to do. And so I cannot staff what I think we're going to need in the next 5 years. And that growth in that area, I know they've talked about it for years, it's becoming real. And I would just, that's my message to the board, is that planning for tomorrow. That's really what we're looking at, is where will we be in 3 years? Where will we be in 5 years? And if we can make some maybe tough decisions now, in 5 years, it'll be quite a bit easier to make those steps, as opposed to not making those decisions now, waiting, and then having to make those decisions right on top of each other. Because what you'll probably have is something similar to where you have overcrowded schools in pockets, and then you're trying to build a school, but you can't necessarily staff it completely. So you're going to have to share staff, and you could just see how this could be. I mean, President Flores, I know you're an educator, and it's difficult when you're asked to share between buildings. It's one of the hardest things you're asked to do. When you teach in one building in the morning, and then you leave and go to another building, that's difficult. That's really hard. Those are the type of things I might anticipate us having to do if we don't look at some of the combination here that we're talking about. And there could be many other ideas. I think our principals, maybe they have some ideas. Many of them know our community very well and might be able to make some suggestions. I'll gather some feedback from them in a separate meeting. But I just wanted to get this out to everybody and let you start thinking about it and taking a look at it. Love to hear your feedback.
Questions, comments, concerns?
Madam President.
Go ahead.
Although they're very difficult decisions to be made, right? It's tough. I think that something that we really need to think about is holding community meetings, because we definitely need the input of the community that will be affected perhaps at the moment, but they need to understand the reasoning behind it, right? So letting them know and having the input from the principals definitely is necessary. So I think that the preparation and I think involving everyone is critical so that they don't, the community knows that their voice is part of the decision, not just that it was made by the directors or principals, administration, but in everyone's voice is there. And yes, I think we see that this is happening very, very fast. I completely agree, and especially even here at Yucca, we know that that's, there's a ton of kids, and it keeps growing, it seems, even though that there was a solution, and by the minute, it grows. So again, I think that important point here is hold those community meetings as we're in the preparation and looking into this.
Ms. Rodriguez, thank you for that input, and I appreciate that you brought up the Chaparral community, because I would remind everybody here that we did make adjustments to the attendance zone at Yucca Heights now twice in the last several years, but I do believe those are still temporary, and my hope is the long-term solution is adding the 6th grade STEM Academy here to Chaparral Middle School that will relieve enough space in our current elementaries to accommodate the new growth that's happening here in Chaparral. It wouldn't be shocking. I think that might be a few more years out, but it is, I think, possible that in 10 years you need another elementary school here in the Chaparral area as fast as it's growing. We'll see how that goes.
I did have a question. Have you had any conversations with Dr. Torres as far as just to make sure there's that like what does she tell you?
Madam President, board members, thank you for that question. Dr. Torres has been just fabulous to work with, without a doubt. However, they have no dollars available to spend on Alta Vista. Would they allow us to spend dollars? Yes. So if we wanted to build a facility on their campus, that's something that they would allow. That's something that they would consider. I don't, and so if that's something that we want to explore, we can further, but I think they're open to that, but all of that growth, that construction cost will be on our shoulders to accomplish. I would say that if that's a direction the board wants to go, my recommendation would be let's get through the 3 middle school projects, make sure we get those STEM academies in place, then see what we have left. And I'm looking at that cash balance to make sure we don't want to get ourselves in too many construction projects at once and then overextend ourselves.
And then, okay, no, well, I'm not saying that this is what I want personally, but just explore would be awesome.
Absolutely.
Okay, and then just curious also, I do see room in Gadsden High School just based on the data that you presented. How about Desert Pride? What does that look like, or is there no room?
Madam President, board members, here's why I might look at, and remember, I started with looking at facilities, so I didn't want anyone to feel like I was picking on anybody. I just tried to take the oldest facilities in those feeder areas. Desert Pride is one of our newest facilities, and so it really, I don't know if it makes sense to have made that type of an investment and then move them. I actually think there might be a possibility there in utilizing those portables that are currently Alta Vista and maybe expand opportunities for Desert Pride. Because you got to keep in mind that our population at we're serving a very unique population at Desert Pride that traditional system has not been successful for, and we keep seeing at-risk dollars. We keep talking about at-risk. That's a really good place to be spending at-risk dollars because those kiddos, the traditional system didn't work for them. So I'm gonna, if you were to ask my recommendation, I think we look at DPA as maybe the change for DPA could be vocational high school tracks and something of that nature. So I would suggest expanding it and leaving it in place, and that would be my recommendation at this point.
I guess because I just want to make the comment, I mean no disrespect, is that, yes, they are a unique community, but also the kids from Alta Vista. That's why they're seeking that, because maybe the traditional high schools is not working for them either. So, I think, obviously we're going to look at all possibilities and nothing has been set in stone, but definitely is like Ms. Rodriguez said, is definitely have those community meetings, not only with the parents, but also involve the students. And students, if you're listening, get involved. Your voice is important because we don't want to do something to you. You are the students, so your voice matters. And you specifically chose Alta Vista Early College for some reason. And so I also want to take that into consideration, but I just want to make that comment.
Madam President, I might add to that, just for clarification. We want to make sure we're very clear here. If the decision were made to move Alta Vista anywhere, they still remain their own school. So they wouldn't be combined technically with any school because they would remain Alta Vista Early College High School. Its own school designation, its own school. And that's why I kind of thought maybe the Old English might be a nice way to kind of keep some level of a separation, if you will, because you're right, they specifically chose something they wanted to see different. And I love your idea of let's talk to those students, let's talk to those families, and maybe help us understand what they might prefer to do.
And I just would conclude, I remember Ms. Murillo and Ms. Rodriguez, you all got to go, and Mr. Cano got to go to that San Diego NMSBA. And so I know that maybe this is also the opportunity, because you all had mentioned how you had attended, I think, some sessions and looking at early college high schools differently, because I just want to throw that out there. I'm not saying what to do, but many times there's also the, you might say, well, what do I want? Well, it's not what I want, it's what the community wants, it's what the kids that are there want. And so, maybe it's an opportunity to start looking at early college different, because maybe it can help me elaborate more. I remember you mentioning, Ms. Murillo, that, many times our kids that go there, there's a purpose why they're going there. But then, many of them say, well, I don't want to go, the ones that decide to stay, for example, in Chaparral, well, because they don't want to lose their high school experience, right? So, elaborate, Ms. Murillo.
So in that specific discussion was most of the students wanted, academically were more stable, so they wanted that early college experience, but half of those did not want to miss out on the high school experience because they couldn't play sports or do any other activities. So they combined the early college, they were in the same school but in different buildings. You can see you can tell the difference. And the way they set it up, it was very, very nice, but it was everything under the same building. I don't like the idea of separating Desert Pride just because of that same reason. We're talking about academically, we're kids who it didn't work out for them, and yet with the early college, they are academically prepared there. They're like hungry of more, they want more academically. So I think this might work, but I agree. In this case, how it started, it started actually with two students that they wanted. They said, we want to go to early college, but we don't want to leave our high schools. One was in band, and the other one, remind me, I don't know if he was football. And they just had a really loud voice, and because of them, they built that early college within the high school. I don't remember how it worked. We do have the paperwork, but we can look more into it. Another thing is, since I'm already speaking, when I met with Mr. Pacheco today, you said 5 years. I think 2 years. Some of the facilities, they're barely being built, and they're already, he told me there's 2 people already looking, they're ready to place bids, but the facility is not even up yet. They're just, everybody's like on it. So I don't even think we're gonna be there in 5 years. I really think it's gonna be 1 to 2 years. It's ridiculous the amount of the growth there, and the money's there. That's the other part, that the money in Santa Teresa is already there, and they continue to invest more money into it, and I don't know, it's gonna be very interesting to see what's gonna happen next semester.
I would conclude is just, look at and dream of the possibilities of maybe reinventing the whole idea of early college. And yes, kids, you guys, don't let us do something to you. You guys got to speak up, and you guys have bright minds, and you guys are the students that are going through this, so come and, give, we want to hear your voice, so.
Madam President, I would just, so what I think we probably want to do is this will be a very common item for the next several meetings, and we probably start planning some community meetings. I would really need some feedback on anything you saw that you like or don't like, and then we can start making those adjustments. But I think we need to sit down with those communities and be very transparent and be prepared for some individuals that may not like the plan. However, we're going to have to probably be prepared for a rationale, and there could be some changes. They may have some ideas that we hadn't thought of, and so we want to be ready to consider those. Another thing I'll add, and this is a little bit of a side note, is as we embark on these middle school projects, we need a place to put kids. As we embark, like this particular facility, it's currently scheduled to be remodeled, not rebuilt. And so we're going to need a space to put kiddos. Now, for the ST and for Gadsden, we could utilize any campuses that we've combined, keep those facilities up in the, for that distinct purpose of when we remodel those middle schools, let's put those middle school students there temporarily. Then when the middle schools are done, we'll bring them back, obviously, to the middle school. Then we can make some decisions on those facilities. They're probably right now adequate, and with a little bit of investment, we probably can have them ready for those projects. Those are going to be significant projects, and as all of you know, everything to do with construction is tentative timelines, and so they always tell you, well, we'll start on this date, and we'll have a completion date here. Well, I can just tell you when you're in those meetings, watch that completion date, because it just starts moving, and it starts moving, and it's never exactly, they're all estimated. So we'll make it easier on ourselves if we're not trying to work around a construction project. I'm thinking Gadsden Middle School. Parking there is not easy to deal with, and adding students and construction project and all that could be really a challenge. If we could utilize Mesquite for some of that, that could really be easy to do and make it a little easier. Now, we could also use Gadsden High School as a component of that. Maybe 7th graders go to one campus, 8th graders go to another, because we know we have space at the high school. But I don't know how everybody's going to feel about that, but those are options we have if we make some of these decisions.
Madam President.
Go ahead, ma'am.
I just wanted to make the comment that I think that it's important to look at the different avenues, right? What can be done? And definitely looking what is more effective or efficient for our students. And I think that one thing that I would say is I love what's happening at every campus, right? But sometimes we need to make those adjustments. Desert Pride, I believe, does need that space. It's a unique set of needs that are there. And so keeping that separate, I do agree that Alta Vista needs something different. Every time that I go through there and I see the portables, I don't appreciate it. I don't think it's the best. But again, it was what we could work at the moment with, right? And so looking at what the possibilities are, and even you know, as it was mentioned, looking into DACC, I mean, it's not like it's not possible, but let's see what the reality is, right? Is it feasible? But as we keep insisting, right, the voice of everyone is what's going to make us really make that core decision with the professionals, right, that know that are within those campuses, but then the students are the ones that we're looking for their well-being. So yes, I think looking at the avenues and continuing this conversation, and, you know, as a community, bringing up those ideas and points that we might be missing, you might have those ideas and bring them up.
Thank you.
I have one last question, and if you don't have the answer, that's okay. What were the original intentions for Alta Vista? Was it to have their own campus? Was there plans to build? I've always been curious, like, was there plans to build them a school, or?
My understanding, the last plan that I was aware of was that there was a conversation to have it at DECC, at the Anthony campus. That was the last probably in-depth conversation that occurred. The roadblock with that was that at that point, higher ed, the way higher ed facilities are funded is a little bit different, and it's based on square footage. And so what happened with higher ed, and I don't know if it's still in place, they weren't allowed to expand any additional square footage. They couldn't do any more building at a time period. Now, I know, like, they had a center, DACC had a center in Hatch, and that center was actually sold to the school district because they wanted to use that square footage somewhere else. So they had to give up a building to get that square footage back. But those are, again, that's a good, you know, that's a proposal that I will explore and try to get some more detail to it, and let's look at that as an option.
Thank you. Okay. Any further questions, comments? No? Okay. Moving on to discussion item 10C, our 2021-22 assessment results. Superintendent Dempsey.
Madam President, board members, I believe Mr. Duggan and maybe Ms. Hernandez, I'm not sure, she's going to turn that over to Mr. Duggan and let him deliver these results. Thank you.
Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Dempsey, I want to preface this conversation with a little bit of joke with dinner here is the principals always kind of shiver when I come up here because they're not sure what I'm going to present, and also that it's going to take forever, right? So I'm going to tell you, I'm going to try and get through the next 28 slides really, really quickly, okay? So I have a ton of information for you. But I'll try. I promise I'll try to be succinct as I go through this. So one thing that we're trying to do with our student success department, so if we go to our next slide, we have constructed this academic scoreboard, and if we click on that link, this should be a soon-to-be change to the website. You'll see first, our first tab is the keys for all these, but then also a breakdown of all the percentages and all the distribution for all the schools. So on the tabs up above, you'll see scoreboard, and then a breakdown by elementary, and it'll break out the distribution for everybody. So, parents and community can look and see all of the different scores and score distributions. So I just wanted to hit the highlights of what we have because I'm going to review a few different assessments, high school trends through the spring SAT, our measure of student success assessment, which was the summative assessment for grades 3 through 8, and then some K through 2 data here. So I'll go through quick, starting with our high school trends. You see a distribution here. Kudos to Alta Vista for being above the state average on this trend, and also kudos to Chaparral High School, who made some pretty significant gains over the year. But overall, you would see a random distribution right around the state numbers. So we didn't have a lot of concerns there, and I'll have a few comments at the end on how to address some of these issues. Next slide, please. So our next slides are for ELA. They're going to cover grades 3 through 8. And so this first group is from ELA, and they're going to show us in comparison to state trends. So you'll see on our elementary language arts, we're a little bit below the state average, which is the red line, and then Gadsden is the blue line, but right around 30% proficiency. State did really well in grades 3 through 5. So next slide. Middle school, we're right up even with the state. So you see, so I included grades 6 through 8 because that's what the state considers to be middle school, even though we recognize that the elementary schools here are the ones serving 6th grade, and a little bit above the state average at 6th grade, and then again, 7th grade right at the state average, slight drop with 8th grade. So next slide, please. So the other side of that is math, and so going into the math side, wanted to show here that you see here our math scores, which have traditionally been pretty low, actually made quite a bit of gains here. And so from 3rd grade, where we start a little bit below the state average, and then 4th grade jumping above the state, and then 5th grade matching up even with them. Again, around that 20 to 30%, so pretty even distribution through all of the different grades. And then middle school math. Here you see 6th and 8th grade are above, solidly above the state average, and then 7th grade right at the state average. So to me, very positive trends. I think we've invested quite a bit of resources into our math side of it. So it was really neat to see this level of achievement for them. So next slide, please. There was a new assessment this past year, which was the assessment of science readiness. Kind of was delayed for 2 years. And so it encompassed grades 5th, 8th, and 11. And here you'll see we are a little bit below the state average in grades 5 and 11, right at the state average at 8th grade. Next slide, please. So our last little component of this is a breakout. Here in Gadsden, we have a lot of students who are within their first 3 years of speaking English, so they're allowed to take the test in Spanish. So these next measures are really measuring Spanish proficiency, or students who took the test in Spanish. And I would also note that this is also a big thing for our students, because us being one of the 4 focus districts in the Yazzie Martinez lawsuit, it's really a heavy area of focus for us is our dual language and transition students. So going into this is one that I really would celebrate, which is grades 3 through 8. All of our students who take the tests in Spanish language arts are scoring at a rate well above the state average. And then the next slide is Spanish math, and you see that same area where we are scoring above. Again, high points in grade 6. I mean, just a tremendous amount of work across all of the assessments in grade 6, as well as grade 8 pretty consistently showing above the state average. So, and then our last one, which was science, also above the state average. So one of the things that I would really point out to our dual language and transition students and all of our really bilingual programs is the amount of work they're doing to serve those kids. Because I will say this at the end: proficiency isn't everything, but it's really warms our heart when we see proficiency levels this much above the state average, especially in this community, which is a significant need here. So, next slide, please. So I wanted to go into our K through 2. These scores are not necessarily set up in a summative, and I'll explain. A summative manner is one test right at the end of the year that's kind of comprehensive. These ones are more what are called interim, so they'll come in the beginning of the year. We test in August, then we test again in either December or January, then we do an end of year cycle. And so that's the way our students here, there's 2 different tests, which is iStation testing, and that's to test literacy. And then there's iReady testing, which is to test math. On this side of it, you see the trend, and you'll probably remember this from my presentation last year, where we had 43% of our students in critical need in August. And you see that shrinks to 33%, as well as growth in the green areas. So demonstrate, a lot of great learning from grades K through 2. I think if we were to, I didn't provide this information here, but I know as we dig deeper into the data, first grade seemed to be, and we knew this anyways, was really impacted heavy by the pandemic because those students missed their kindergarten year. So their first grade year was their first year back in school, was really entering school. So that was probably the area that I think we're going to monitor over the next several years to see how we can adjust and serve those students because they didn't get those foundational skills having been so affected by the pandemic. So otherwise, you know, one thing I would point out on this is our third grade teachers and literacy across the district really showed pretty significant growth in that area of third grade. So there were a lot of good things I saw out of the iStation data. Next slide, please. This one is one area that I'm probably most proud of, that I'm super excited to present to you. Is you'll remember this slide last year showed about 4% green, and I think 70 to 80% were red in this area for iReady. And so this is how we finished the year last year. We were recognized by iReady. 5 of our schools scored in the top, I can't remember, top 10% of the state out of the schools, including one that at the middle of the year was in the top position as far as growth. And so you see here we finished out with about 35% on grade level, which is just an amazing amount of work by the educators in those grade levels. And then the next slide breaks it down by growth. And I didn't bring my glasses, but you'll see a lot of stretch growth and met their growth goals, their annual growth goals for these out of the math side of it. So next slide. And this is the stretch goal. So you see, so the stretch goal, you know, what it does is it sets a predicted amount of goal of percentage gain that a student would accomplish in a year, and it tracks whether they show that gain. A stretch goal is a percentage over it. So it kind of goes in the idea of in a typical year I would learn so much, that would be considered to be 100%. And then above that, it gives us a percentage, and the stretch goal I believe is like 150% based off of their original baseline. So you see across our district, and there were several schools, I know Desert View, Sunrise again was in the middle of the year in the top spot. Desert View I think ended up passing them during the middle of the year to the end of the year side of it, but we just really showed a significant amount of growth in K through 2 math. So next slide, please. So I wanted to give you an update because, again, like I said, the summative tests for grades 3 through 8 are measure of student success. So, but we also, you know, we love a good test. So we test our kids beginning of the year, middle of the year, end of year as in what's called the IMASA, the interim measure of student success assessment. These break out into on target, near target, or behind target, right? And so there's 3 levels of these. And they are, again, set to measure growth. And you'll see here, these were graphs that I was very excited about when I presented last January to everybody, which is, see high percentages of growth. One thing I would note from the middle of the year to the end of the year is we still had a pretty significant amount of red, and I had kind of correlated those numbers to chronic absenteeism last year. And you'll see here, our red has significantly shrunk. And so we still see those levels of blue and which are advanced on the high end of growth, and then also expected growth in the green areas. And so, but again, you see the yellows, a lot of kids who were near expected. If we break those down, still same thing, there's a correlation with absences as part of it. So a lot of learning on the reading side of it, the grades 3 through 8. You'll see the same thing with math. Or this is language usage, so more writing and expression on this. And you see we do well, blue and green. And then the last one is the math, which shows, again, high levels of growth, blue and green. So really fantastic job by those educators who were dealing with a lot of issues last year. So moving forward on the next slide, just want to give a quick high-level overview. The areas of improvement that we were looking at are elementary reading, I think that was probably the area, you heard the term learning loss from the pandemic. This was probably the area that was most significantly impacted by our learning loss, or that we identified as learning loss. Our elementary and high school science, I think, we recognize we need to make some adjustments as far as our instructional planning for those subjects, because we saw a gap. And then the last thing was the high school SATs. As we went through and kind of did the autopsy for the SATs, we met with the principals, the secondary principals, and we had some discussion on it. And of course, it's always somewhat uncomfortable when we don't do as well as we thought it was. But really, it came down to, once we learned a little bit more about the SAT test, I would note a lot of these high school kids ended up growing up under the PARC system, which penalized you for wrong answers. The SAT does not penalize you. So we started looking at our answering trends and seeing that kids on average only answered about 18 out of the 58 questions, because there was a fear of getting it wrong, when if they would have, and so really they were taking too much time on each question, and the SAT is a time test. So I think from that side of it, we have to do more work on giving them strategies to take the tests. And I don't think it was a good reflection of the instruction that was going on at the high school level, as much as it was something of the shift in the test and really the strategies, how we would help them. So that's kind of our focus to work on next year. Our areas of celebration, and I'll recognize this again, but our elementary math, just awesome job of staying above the state averages and really working, especially, I would always say, go back to that meeting we had last year in August, and it was all red, especially math. And so to see the levels of growth in the areas of math just really speaks to the quality of educators we have in the district. The middle school performances, grades 6 through 8, were consistently above the state average on everything. And so, I think that there's always historically been middle school is a tough level, it's a transition level, it's very hard to be academic focused at middle school. So hats off to the principals for really maintaining that atmosphere. Our English learning programs, again, you saw that huge gap where we were well above of our English learning programs. And then, just the focusing, when we get away from proficiency, but if we just look at growth and students learning, we see high levels of student learning across the district. And so it speaks really well because, and I always say this, I could draw that proficiency line anywhere, right? As a statistician, I could say, here's our goalpost, and then I can move the goalpost back or forward. And that's how we measure proficiency. But really, when you look at it and you level that playing field and you say, this is what the kids knew coming in, and this is what they know coming out, which is more what growth is based on, it really shows some significantly positive trends. And so I always encourage everybody, this is such a powerful metric, is to look at how much green and blue is associated with the growth side of it. So my last slide, like I said, 28 slides, we went through it pretty quick. So as we move forward and we have these conversations, I always encourage everybody, nobody loves a good test more than me. I don't want to devalue tests or anything, right? And so, but No Child Left Behind was really had some wonderful ideas that all got destroyed because it's focused on proficiency, which is just not a good measure of learning. So I always encourage everybody, let's start to move away from our conversations based on proficiency, because it's always the last thing kids are going to demonstrate, right? There's so many factors that are part of learning, and proficiency is really the last thing that they will demonstrate. What I would really focus on is our student data. One thing I could tell you last year was a huge concern when I presented in August, was that was the only data we had, and it was all red, right? And so I was really worried, and I felt overwhelmed by the task that we had ahead of us. I could tell you, as we sit here today, we have data on attendance, we have data on instruction, we have walkthrough data from the leadership side of it, we have data on students that are survey, SEL-based data, behavior data, a range of data. And this aligns more with our strategic plan, which is focused on student data, addressing the individual student needs, and then also improving the outcomes of the students. And it's not just part of our strategic plan, but as you know, what drives our strategic plan is driven by our mission and vision. And all of these things line up with what we're trying to do, working with individual students and focusing on learning for each student. So I would really encourage us to start celebrating some of those things and have conversations much more focused on advocacy, how students feel about their education. The last thing that I would bring up is there's going to be a parent satisfaction survey that we push out through the district. To me, I will tell you as a longtime educator, the most valuable metric is parent satisfaction. They are directly working with us. They always send us their best kids, right? They don't keep the good ones at home. We get to see their best ones. And so their satisfaction is really the ultimate measure of whether we're doing a good job or not. And so I think that's an important one. There's an opportunity to learn survey through the PED that is coming out in the spring as well. So we'll have one in the fall and then hopefully one in the spring. And then the last thing I wanted to do was celebrate the successes of some of our district, our curriculum alignment, especially you saw that green with the elementary math. I recognize our elementary specialist, Mr. Salas. I've worked with him over the year and seen the extensive work he does to align our curriculum across the district. It's the best thing to be able to sit here and say, I can go to Chaparral Elementary and watch a math lesson, and then go to North Valley Elementary and see the same curriculum and the same process is being taught. And so that's really something that he works on. I work directly with the intervention teachers, and you know, I think we've had conversations about the intervention teachers and their role, but one thing they're in Panorama documenting their intervention plans, so I can see all the work and the alignment to our strategic plan that they're doing now, and really be able to change and really put some value to the position they're in. And then the last person I would recommend is, you know, our unsung hero here is Ms. Villalobos, who is always an advocate for students and really is a very unique thinker. I know in my role, I bring a lot of things to her. She funds all of my craziness, and I think it really helps the students. I mean, it just provides so much support from our students, and so it's really a good representation of the district. And so kind of going forward, I wanted to say, you know, we have so much data and things to support from the kids. We'll keep assessments as part of that conversation, but I would really encourage us to also branch out and consider, you know, really talking about a lot of the different pieces of data that we have for the students. So with that, I wrap that up. So I don't know if I hit my 10-minute mark, but I didn't get tasered by any of the principals, so.
Okay, questions, comments, concerns for Mr. Duggan?
Madam President.
Go ahead now.
So it is a ton of information, and I think dissecting it and digesting it is going to take a while. But although I see that the trends, you know, it seems they were pretty decent, but as a parent and definitely as a school board member, I'm still not satisfied, right? Although we're there with the state, I want our kids to be above the state, every single grade level. So I appreciate everything that the teachers are doing, and I think that having all this data is really going to be yes, it's going to be very productive, and it's going to help us to see where we're really standing and what needs to be done. So I appreciate all the information that you give us. I know that it is sometimes to hear it, again, it's overwhelming, but it's necessary. It's necessary, and it really hits that spot to really figure out where we're lacking or what needs are out there. I think that getting more detail, I still feel like, although I saw all of this, I would like more information on my end, you know, possibly receiving this and being able to see it. And I agree, we talked about the students, you know, feeling like they don't have the potential that they do, which in reality they do. They just need to know, and I was mentioning to Mr. Duggan earlier that, you know, in the district, I feel like we have a treasure, and that treasure, you know, we just need to polish it. I think that our students and our parents need to know that the educators are doing that they can, everything that they can, and so, you know, realizing that they can get further, and those numbers need to increase. We definitely, that percentage is good, but it's not great, and so we need to be higher. So let's keep working on that and definitely looking at how it's moving. So thank you, Mr. Duggan.
Absolutely. Ms. Rodriguez, I could not advocate for your point more. I would tell you this, there's so much information that I would almost recommend, because honestly, I'm not a Steelers fan, so I'm not planning on watching the game tonight. So I could keep you all here all night if I needed to with this information. But really what I would recommend is more regular updates through either coffee with the superintendent, coffee with the principal, some of those things that we could focus on, because you're absolutely right. I mean, I could do a bunch of charts, but it's not going to tell the whole story. And we need to be able to have conversations that are more in detail. So I would recommend, and I would love to work with everybody to figure out ways to do that, to give more regular updates. So.
Further questions, comments? Okay, so my turn. So I'm going to piggyback on what Ms. Rodriguez said, is that as a parent of actual two current students, I appreciate all your hard work, and thank you to instructional specialists who go out and run the PLCs and et cetera. However, I am going to ask the same thing, is that I'm not satisfied with those numbers, because, yes, we are above in some situations above the state, but being 20th, 40th percentile is not something to be proud of. So I think we need to work on that, and especially with our Ls. We are one of, yes, like you said, we are one of the focus districts for Yazzie Martinez lawsuit, and so our English language learners have the potential, and so we need to support those students and support our dual language teachers, our maintenance model teachers, so that, I was reading up on Yazzie Martinez to further educate myself, and one of the things was saying that, goodness, I went blank, is supporting our teachers, providing that training for them. And then I would ask, I guess, if you could provide later on more data. I didn't see any data on special education. I'd like to see how our special education students did. Then I'd like to see data broken down where you've got English language learners with special education, and see what those numbers look like. So while we did make growth is growth, and yes, we celebrate that, but I think our kids are more than capable to go, like I mean, and I see heads nodding of our administrators, so, I'm preaching to the choir here, but yes, we do want our numbers to increase, and it's not easy. I mean, and when we look at the data, we have to all own it, including myself, as a board member and as a parent. And let me see what I was going to say. So yeah, let's keep working on that. What I was curious is, cliche phrases such as, data-driven instruction, data talks. I can go on and on and on. And so something that I've been reflecting on is, as PLCs, the PLC is the school. We, as a district, are a PLC. Your cooperative teams are your grade levels and working towards improving data. And so, do our teachers do, I guess I'm curious, and you don't have to answer this evening, but I'm just curious, like, what do those cooperative teams look like? What is being done when our teachers meet? When I know that we're standards-based district, that comes with unpacking standards, so that as I had the opportunity, was it last weekend, to attend, our district doesn't participate on this, but my employer, as an employee of our neighboring district, I do participate in this, and I actually sat on unpacking standards. And so, do we do that so that our teachers really understand what it is that we're teaching, what we want our students to learn, and then based on, what am I trying to say, is do our teachers have the ability to not just because you can give data and I can see it, and if I was a classroom teacher, okay, so maybe my scores they're good, but then even if they're good, what am I going to do to further extend the outcomes of my students that are proficient, and what am I going to do to improve on those that that are not quite where the expectation should be. And so, I mean, I know it's easier said than done, because it's hard, but I think we can do it. But, you know, maybe in the future, maybe a workshop or something where more breaking down of the data would be appreciated. And I'm just very curious also, do we know like who were the districts that did, I mean, are there any districts in New Mexico that were above 40%? Because I have yet to see that information myself. I'm just curious if we know that. And like you, I can go on and on and on, and I'm preaching to the choir, but definitely, you know, our English language learners and our special education learners deserve the best, because that group of students, but also our general ed population, they deserve that when they receive their diploma from Gadsden Independent School District, that they're proficient readers and mathematicians, so that when they pursue their post-secondary education, whether it's entering into the workforce, whether it's going to the military or going to college, whether it's a 2-year, 4-year, that they can achieve and be successful in whatever their future endeavors are. But yeah.
So that's a lot to unpack. So I don't know if I'm going to answer all of it, right? But one thing I will tell you is I truly appreciate the conversation that you're bringing forward here, because because I was hinted at, we need to get into more of these updates, right? So, and I could give you a couple of different examples, which is, you know, our academic service team and our directors are out at the schools on Early Out Wednesdays, and we're watching. Yesterday, I had the privilege to be at Loma Linda Elementary, and I visited 3 different PLCs, led by Ms. Nunez, had kind of taken me around to some of the things that they were doing. And I actually wish I think it was the 3rd grade team, so, you know, that the first one that I visited, I was joking with the teachers, I wish I could film it, because it looked like the type of thing that I would share, like on our New Mexico Teachscape. You probably remember that old training tool to give to the rest of to the teachers around the state. Now, I can tell you not all of them were that quality, because it's a range, right, as far as, but I can also tell you, so speaking of it, for that's more of the qualitative observation that I made, but I can also tell you, so we do have data on how the teachers feel about their abilities to do these things, and we do have that through Panorama. We have a staff survey, a teaching survey that we did last year, and we're getting ready to do another one we do them twice a year, right, for the teachers, and that teacher efficacy is a huge component of it. I can tell you also, you know, I rather obnoxiously send out research to the academic service team, right? And so I sent them a bunch because we had a conversation the other day. And again, I will say the thing that I'm very passionate about is the three most predominant predictors of college success are high school GPA or grades, a growth mindset, which we also survey for, and a sense of belonging, which are part of our surveys. I can tell you the one thing that is, you know, and I had this conversation prior to the meeting, is our kids don't know, or they don't believe they're doing as well as they think, as we see they are, right? So there's that sense of belonging and that self-efficacy, and their confidence in the subject is very low. It's the one consistent theme that we see from elementary all the way to high school, right? Is that their confidence level is low. And that's the thing that we really need to work on. To your point of having teachers, I think teachers, I've tried to show our academic service team, there's an alignment between the distribution that you see on here and our grade distribution. So we've moved away, you know, our proficiency-based grading shift has actually been very beneficial in helping us be predictive of the tests. Because, you know, back when I first started this work with Mr. Dempsey when I was still at Gadsden High School, we'd see 50 to 60% of the kids making A's or B's and then 10% proficiency, right? And so there wasn't that alignment. Now that grade alignment, it's very reflective of the distribution on the test. So that's step one of our plan, of the plan. Now though, what we need to do is, to your point, work with the teachers on helping teachers build these, when a student gets a C or a D because they're not meeting the mark, how they provide feedback and help those kids get better in these concepts so that they can later on retake that assessment and do much better and demonstrate their knowledge of it. That's the next big step that we have to take going forward. And you know, like I said, we have data on that. And I think that we can as a group, and it's right there on our strategic plan. That is literally what, you know, especially goal 1 is all about.
One quick question is, what assessments do we have in place here in Gadsden that allow us, that allow us specifically in ELA, for example? Do we have anything that tells us, okay, this particular student is, for lack of a better word, functioning like a, I'm gonna say 11th grader, and for this standards, he or she is performing, not functioning, performing at a 2nd grade level. Do we have anything that tells us that, so that then we obviously take those focus skills and then bringing in the grade level standards? Does that make sense what I'm saying?
It does.
To bring them up, do we have any assessments like that that we're using here in our district?
So we have, so at the state level provides, you know, the iStation and iReady function in that type of manner for the elementary level. The grade specific knowledge is not as good among the assessments, you know, because IMASA goes to near target, and so that's where you see the growth data is who's on target, who's near target, and who's well below the target. So there is some point of that through 8th grade. At the high school level, we just have the one state assessment, which is the SAT. And I know the state has made a conscious effort to move away from testing at the high school level. So I think we've explored the idea, though, to that point of the SAT, of exploring the idea with some of our, you know, through Power School, there's a test assessment, as well as there's other testing companies that provide SAT and PSAT preparation, so we can do some of those things. So those will give us measures. Now, there's not anything that's really specific to grade level types of ideas, but I will tell you that as part of our expansion of what we're doing out of our Power School products, we brought in a testing tool that does give us access to test banks that teachers can test individual standards. So as long as the standard is written, it was written in a way that it was measured, because a lot of the standards are still tied to Common Core, you know, even though I know a lot of states have moved away from Common Core and written their own standards, they're all pretty much the same standards as Common Core. And so there does have to be, the standard has to be written in a way that's, you can measure it, but we do have those test banks available to the teachers, and that's some of our work over the year, because it's a new testing, and so it's difficult to train everybody, especially when we don't have the individual days. But we are going through the process of training the coaches. There was a wonderful training on this tool today for a lot of the instructional coaches and specialists, and then hopefully they'll be able to share that, you know, in the train-the-trainer model and get that to the school level where all the teachers receive that training.
I guess common question is, at our secondary level, middle school and high school, is what kind of intervention programs are we providing to those kids that are not proficient readers? Because if they are not proficient readers, then they cannot access the standards or the material. For example, if I'm a 6th grade student reading at a 2nd grade level, what did I say, 6th grade, reading at a 2nd grade level, then how do we expect them to then, here's your science, and then go for it? And so do we have any intervention programs that we are currently using in order to bring, you know, the kids up to where they're supposed to be? Because I would dare say from experience and, you know, seeing, you know, we unfortunately probably do have, even in this district, kids that probably still need decoding at middle school and high school level, and I don't know if we're addressing those needs. And some, not everybody though, and then some might actually just need comprehension skills. So, you know, do we have intervention programs that are helping And then are there strategies being used by all content level teachers? Because all content teachers should be literacy teachers. I guess what do we have in place?
Yeah, so great question there. Right now we have money available to the teachers or to the principals as far as, I know Miss Rosie always gives and the high schools actually have the most amount of federal programs funding that's available to them because of the high size of the students that are there. We leave that up to the principals as far as, we don't tell any school how they're supposed to use their federal programs money. We just give them the allotment of what staffs that they can have. I think that the high schools over the past couple years have had trouble filling those positions by a quality person, and it really is it's really kind of a two-factor. It's hard to find somebody at that level that really can connect to kids and be able to teach them, and then also it creates a little bit of a conflict for those kids because, again, those kids in the high school levels, their ultimate goal is graduation, and if we end up taking away a credit by putting them in an intervention class, it puts them back, or it limits their opportunities that they can get those classes for graduation. So I think right now they're in that position. We are exploring the ideas of how to serve them. I will say, Mr. Dempsey can laugh at this, but we have an open RFP out right now to any company that can come in and provide us with these services and with the idea of serving this need at the high school. And so it's going to be, probably before school or after school when we do it, because we don't want to keep penalizing kids and forcing them to get behind on their graduation plan for this, but we do recognize it's a need we need to serve the kids.
And I don't mean to be a pain in the butt, but I am advocating for these kids because, we're probably going to end up having had the conversation of, if you would ask me if my son is behind grade level, it's just personal opinion, me, not of the board, is like I would rather have my son or daughter lose an elective in order for them to be caught up, because I need him or her reading and writing and doing mathematics by when they graduate. And so I'm not saying that the answer is, because there's pros and cons in having interventionists, because also you cannot meet the needs of everybody in a pull-out system. So, definitely, I guess I would ask that the district look at, like intervention in classrooms where, for example, all ELA, if there's a company or some intervention program where all ELA teachers or even your content teachers are strategies, that kids can use, for example, I'm thinking like in many of our kids, especially English language learners, when it comes to writing paragraphs, why do they struggle is because they can't identify the main idea in paragraphs or summarize, etc. So I would just encourage if we can look into ways of either strategies or programs that are out there maybe to help our students, and where it's gonna take a village in order to be able to do that, and you can't just rely on interventionists.
Yeah.
Is my conclusion. Everybody has to pitch in.
Members of the board, Superintendent Dempsey, I think if you're asking, we do have like our Kagan strategies or GLAD strategies, Claves. Are those the kind of pieces, like the tier 1 intervention pieces within the classroom that you're also addressing? Because we do have a lot of strategies that are like our bilingual specialists, for example, train on ELD strategies, or they have the writing academy. And so we do have those pieces in place. As to a formal intervention, program, as we revamp our intervention piece. So we did have like the ILIT and those pieces in place.
So I guess what I'm saying is maybe more strategies that can be implemented just in the general lit to where it impacts, reading, summarizing, paraphrasing, and then also like even writing, you know, many of our kids need strategies and beginning like very simple to
Yes,
where
ma'am.
we build up.
And those are implemented, but we are as a district working to do it across the board because that's one of the biggest pieces is that tier 1 intervention to be able to identify students by levels where they're at and what their need is. So like I said, we do have the Kagan strategy training, the Claves has strategies, GLAD has strategies. We do have some writing workshops and reading workshops. Middle schools, for example, have, forgot the writing program, but there's like a writing intervention program and things like that that we are implementing. Okay, thank you.
Then, with your permission, Superintendent, maybe I don't want to take more time, but maybe making an appointment to, I guess it would be with you, Ms. Hernandez, too, that way.
Yes, ma'am.
you
I
can
could,
review.
if it's not just me, I have Ms. Tarazona who leads a lot of those programs, and then Mr. Araujo. We can sit with you if you need like to come meet with us, and I'll be happy to provide what we do and what's going on in the district across as we start using this baseline data. Because, you know, I think one of the comments that I just heard, you know, we're still suffering from the whiplash from COVID, right? And so this is our first real year, because remember last year, even though we had some baseline data and not all the kids tested, chronic absentee rate in one of our campuses was 50%, which means 50% of those kids did not attend school. And so there's a lot of gaps that we're still working with and trying to work on this piece. And, you know, looking really at our data, like Ms. Rodriguez is saying, it's very tedious for us as well, but I'm gonna tell you that our team, and by team I mean our principals, our specialists, and our coaches are really identifying the needs on their campuses. I would hope that maybe one day you could go into some of our campuses during that Wednesday, because the work they're doing is amazing. Like the principals, you wanna talk about really taking the lead as an instructional leader. They are, you know, they're on us about this data, and I agree with you. I am not comfortable with any of the numbers. I don't care how high we are, but I think as we dissect it, if you're, like I said, we'll do some presentations for you. You'll find we have a lot of variables, but like our 6th grade group on some campuses had a 56% proficiency. And so, you know, you gotta remember we have 2 grade levels that have never tested. That 4th grade and 5th grade group had never tested. And so there's a lot of factors that we're looking at on top of the social emotional piece and all that. But yes, so let's, when you have a chance, we'll email and we'll start setting up some pieces and maybe start giving you chunks. Maybe next time, Mr. Dempsey, we could do something where we can just rank the state where we're at in the middle. And actually, you see our data, believe it or not, we're not anywhere near, we're good. There's a bunch of schools that are minus 20% proficiency, right, Jed? But Jed has that number stuff. Like, thank you.
And so you had mentioned, Mr. Duggan, that you were are you going to post like this information like for the public, and then will you also have data so that if I'm a parent at La Union Elementary, I know exactly that it's broken down, disaggregated?
Yeah, so absolutely. That's one of the things I'm very excited about is sitting with Mr. Carmona and posting. You know, we're going to do a student success page. So again, like I said, I work with a lot of data, just not just testing, but we want to be completely transparent with all of these things. And so, you know, I wanted to bring that out. The other thing, Ms. Flores, I wanted to say, I want to address one thing as far as our interventions. I was very excited to do is we're starting to. You'll see on that spreadsheet. We've added access and Avant to our summative assessments, which I think a lot of people, well, I can tell you historically when I came into this district, it was almost impossible to find those scores. And so one thing we're starting to train our intervention teachers to do is compare their academic scores with their English language proficiency scores now, because we want to be able to address those language components as a more effective intervention than sometimes giving them more math is not necessarily the solution, right? It's getting them to understand what we're asking them is the solution. So we're shifting in that direction. I'm very excited. Ms. Tarazona has brought this in, as well as, you know, I was able to sit the other day with Mr. Reyes and really break down the way we're going to set up some of our programs. And so that is exactly the direction we're going.
Thank you so much for your presentation. Oh, no more questions? Sorry, you're not. Mr. Kano, go ahead.
Just one, and I've noticed that you stated earlier in regards to students' morale because of the grading and all that. I think the student morale, ever since we changed our grading system, and I know that there are some teachers out there as well with the change of the grading system, that there's students that can't get A's. You have students that are B's and C's and continue being in B's and C's. I think that's another reason why some of the students are hanging their heads, because now, before A was easy to get, and now A's are harder to get in the process of going on. And I think, if you have a C and D student, trying to get to B, of course he's gonna be happy. But if you got A and B's students that can't reach that A status as the way the new grading system is, and I think that's what also holds back the students back in moving ahead. And some of the teachers are wonderful. I went to my son's parent teacher conference at Santa Teresa Middle School, and they gave me great props of this, but it goes, it's just that grading system that does not let me push them to the top. And I think that's the morale that's going out there right now.
So that's an excellent thing, and I think that goes to our point of what I was kind of alluding at earlier. Our next step is really working with the grading system that we have in place and showing our teachers and our students how to make improvements. One of the things I would mention so research shows that is impacted significantly by, that's called a fixed mindset, right? And that's where I go to this idea of we need to move to a growth mindset among our students and our teachers, right? To understand, and I'll say, so for example, a very fixed mindset is I gave a test or I gave an assignment, the kids did this, they get this grade. There is no opportunity for improvement, right? That's a very fixed mindset. And we need to be able to shift now and say, right now you're currently at a D or you're currently at a C level. These are the things you need to do to get better, and now I'm going to reteach you these concepts. And then I'm going to give that student another opportunity to demonstrate their learning after they've gone through a reteaching cycle, right? And that's going to improve that student's level of confidence and also improve the growth mindset on that teacher. And it's going to create a much more effective system. I can tell you, because we work a ton with our Marzano resources, this is what's built into the Marzano. That's the work we are literally doing right now with the proficiency scales. So we need to be, but it's that I think is going to be a huge lift for us, because it's a huge shift. It's not just for this district, it's for every district I've ever worked in.
Before I let you go, Ms. Rodriguez, I just wanted to let you know that I've started reading the high reliability book schools, or leading a high reliability school. So I get it that we are like in the infant stage of that. So don't think that I'm just being negative. But I'm like, because I expect more of me, of this board, of you all, of our students. And what's exciting is the possibilities. And so in reading that book, started to read that book, I'm like, I get it. We are in the infant stage, and I get it. We have to be graceful with ourselves too. And so it's not something that's easy, but I'm glad to hear that, I think it's gonna take time, sir, like you said, to go from a fixed mindset to a growth mindset to even I'm guilty as a teacher too, where it was just about cover material. I didn't care if my kids learned, it was like I taught it and oh well. No, we've got to change that. It's not just covering material, it's, what did the student learn, what we want them to learn, what didn't they learn, and what are we gonna do? And then one of the biggest ahas for me was and that's the word they use, extension. What are we gonna do to extend those kids that are high performing? So ya me voy a callar. Mr. Rodriguez.
Thank you. On what you're saying and what Mr. Cano is stating, I agree. Perhaps the morale is down, and especially our high-achieving students, right, that we're used to those A's. But I think we definitely need to create a new, start looking at it at a different angle, right? And so as a mom, I definitely want my child to be really mastering the skill and not just getting those A's because he's getting those A's. So I think this grading system, though it seems very, very difficult to achieve those grades, it really is creating a stronger person, a stronger student. And so patience, and I agree, we're in the infant stage. It's gonna take a while. Yes, very, very, very tiny, right? This stage is gonna take a while to move to the next one, but not losing the main goal. Right? What is it that we're seeking? And as teachers, I know it's very frustrating, but I was actually on the contrary of what Mr. Cano was saying. I received a lot of positive feedback on that, and I was excited. When I left, there were several teachers that really emphasized on that, and seeing that they are receiving, and I guess it takes the person too, right, to be able to grasp all that information. Marzano, we understand. I'm excited to go in January and really see what it looks like, but I'll take on the going on Wednesdays to see, because we have to be very open-minded, I think, right? And I think the educators need to definitely be open-minded, because it's a shift. You know, it's a complete pivot from what we were used to. And so again, I was excited to hear that though it's difficult, they're understanding what the point of this is, right? And so from the beginning, I saw the end goal, and maybe, you know, it's easier said than done. Obviously, I'm not in the classroom, but getting all that training and really absorbing it and really implementing it is where we're gonna see the difference. And so I think it's a matter of patience and instilling that in our students, that, you know, it's okay. A B is the new A for now, right? Until you understand that, oh, I just needed that one other step. And remember, one thing that I heard it from one, and it wasn't a teacher, I heard it from someone making a comment, you know, that they're still saying they need to be able to teach the class. No, if we're still there, there's a problem. There's a problem, and it's okay. It's okay that problem exists, right? Because we need to be able to say, hey, I'm still not understanding. And so I think it also takes a matter of being very mature, and it's okay if you don't know. It's better that you ask than remain in that stage, right? And remain still and saying, well, this is what I understand. So let's continue, and let's continue praising our students for what they are doing, because I think that they are, that growth, you know, that we see, and sometimes those percentages don't seem like a whole lot, but it is growth, you know, and growth is important. So let's continue with that attitude and that mentality and that wanting to excel even more. And I think that in the long run, you know, our students, once they go into college or they decide, whatever it is that they decide to do after they graduate school, they'll realize that that's why they were telling us. That's why we needed to go above and beyond than just that step where I can prove I can do 10 problems and that's it. No, do 10 problems and understand what you're doing. So, thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you for your presentation, sir.
Thank you, everybody.
Okay, moving on to our next discussion item. 10D, advanced placement courses in our district. Superintendent Dempsey.
Madam President, board members, Mr. Wogomuth is going to present this item.
And nothing, Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Dempsey, thank you for having me tonight. Nothing more terrifying than Nick and Jed presenting in the same night, right, back to each other. So, so happy Thursday. I bring to you a little program update for advanced placement. And this may be an introduction to advanced placement for some of you, so that's how I want to make sure I approach this and be able to answer some questions and then bring you back information that may not be included here at a later date. So advanced placement, oftentimes sometimes called AP, is a program by College Board, who also runs the SAT and PSAT programs, and it gives students an opportunity to take what we call advanced placements in high school, an opportunity to pass exam at the end of that course to either receive college credit or be able to CLEP out or get advanced placement in college. So instead of having to take a intro Spanish class, they can take a second level Spanish class. Of course, you know, earning college credit in high school via an AP exam can save you money, and that's a great thing. There are some fast facts there about advanced placement. In total, they offer 38 different classes, and of course, 85% of selective colleges indicate that an AP experience has a positive impact on the admission for students. Next slide, please. We have, you know, program goals here. I want to thank, we've been working with Miss Marianne Clark that's been helping us on our Gifted Advisory Council. She's a great I Learned Advanced Placement resource. And so, of course, our AP program goals do match a couple of our strategic goals. And of course, they do match our gifted program education goals. We want to make sure that by the 26-27 school year, we're adhering to all College Board protocols, and we're maximizing College Board resources. We want to make sure we increase the capacity of our teachers to deliver rigorous instruction, and we want to make sure that we are having equity and access to our AP classes to all students in GISD. Next slide, please. So how many AP courses are offered at each school? There's a quick glance there. It's important to know for an AP course to be offered at a school, it has to be authorized by College Board, ends up on what's called the College Board Course Ledger. That requires the advanced placement teacher to basically create a syllabus and submit that syllabus to College Board, and it be approved by College Board. So currently this year, this is the number of courses that are taught at each school. That fluctuates from year to year based on student interest and student enrollment in the courses. This next slide, I'm not going to read the whole thing to you. It's it's kind of tiny. I sent this to you in the email, but there you can see listed by a subject area the different courses that are offered at all of our high schools. Our two most consistent and strong areas between the three high schools are our literacy courses, right? Our English courses and our world language courses in Spanish. If you're interested later, on the bottom there's a link there for your perusal to see all 38 courses that Advanced Placement offers. Next slide, please. What does it take for a teacher to be AP certified? Well, most importantly, you have to be certified, highly qualified in that subject by the state of New Mexico. There's no specific AP certification. Rather, I mentioned that the syllabus must be submitted and approved by College Board. However, it has been a practice in this district for as long as I've been administrator, and highly recommended that teachers do attend the AP Summer Institute either prior to teaching the course, or the situation where they had to teach it at the start of the year, that they attend the following summer. And so we have a pretty good track record of that. I've just got this information of the 29 teachers that are currently teaching AP courses this year. 27 have attended a Summer Institute. One has attended a PLTW equivalent to that Summer Institute, and we only have one teacher out of our 29 that has not attended a Summer Institute or equivalent. Next slide, please. What supports do we offer teachers? I think this is the great thing about AP and College Board, excuse me, and that we alluded to in one of the goals, is that AP and AP New Mexico offers a very wide, comprehensive set of supports for teachers. Again, we are lucky. Many of you know Marianne Clark. I've got to know her a little more in this new role, and she, when we look sometimes over, in El Paso, and we think about why some of those AP programs are strong in that district, I'm pretty sure that's due to Marianne Clark. I did not know prior to getting this job what an extensive background she has in building those services for kids, and we're very lucky to have her, and she's really helped take the lead on organizing this plan to support all of our students. And so she's really taken a lead on that five-year plan. And again, we want to make sure we foster a district-wide community of collaboration. So there's several opportunities for teachers to get support. The biggest one is always AP Summer Institute. Those are usually free to any teacher in New Mexico that wants to go every summer. They usually have them in Las Vegas, and the different universities at Highlands, at NMSU, and UNM are the typical places that they have them. Obviously, online workshops. The next slide. They have mentoring programs, webinars. They have an AP community for teachers to join. And of course, one of the big suggestions is to become an AP reader, to actually be an AP reader of the tests and scores of the tests, because you can really understand what the students need to be able to know and do. And again, Mrs. Clark, her goal, as she's done previously, is to make sure that by the end of our 5 years, we're really leveraging for our teachers every single one of these, not as an individual teacher, not as an individual school, but as a district. Next slide, please. And then, of course, what do we offer students? It's important to understand that AP is open enrollment. It's accessible and available to all students. There's no pre-entry requirements. College Board has done a great job over the last few years in opening up called My AP Classroom, that again, all our AP teachers should be leveraging. At this time, they may not be, and again, that's a goal of Ms. Clark's to have them access that, but of course the AP Classroom offers these different features I've placed here in the graphic. Again, additional tutoring and support, your classic study groups, AP study groups, those have been going on for a long time. And again, any student with a disability gets certain types of accommodation and modifications for the classroom instruction. And then of course, the state has been great in providing financial support. Typically the tests are about $93 or $96 a piece. Any of our kids that meet a certain at-risk indicator can get that for $3. The high school principals have made a decision, a smart one, to use some of our additional at-risk funds to make sure for those kids who didn't initially qualify for a fee reduction for tests, get it down to that $3 or $5. I can't quite remember what it is these days. Next slide. And I'll be happy to provide any clarifications on those slides, or take some questions back and do some research for you and get back to you.
Questions, comments, concerns?
Mrs. Rodriguez. Madam President, thank you. Okay, let's see. So you mentioned about the teachers having the certifications, right, or what they need. So they don't need to specialize or have a master's degree on the specific subject. Okay, so then I saw that there's a big difference between campuses, right? The AP courses that are being offered. What's the reasoning behind that? Is it because teachers are not asking to be part of the AP, or?
Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Dempsey, I think that begins with one. I think it's good our teachers recognize that that's a challenge, and for them to teach that material, they themselves want to be prepared and ready and knowledgeable, because there's nothing harder sometimes than sitting in front of a class of AP kids, because they want the answer, then the explanation about the answer. So it takes an individual who really has experience and comfortable in their subject, and willing to, hey, I'll teach the AP class, I'm gonna go to the Summer Institute, and commit to working to make the students be successful. Oftentimes, and this doesn't really happen in our district, oftentimes, teachers will want to teach the AP class because, I've got all the kids that aren't gonna cause me, any issues, and I'm just gonna kind of lean back and let the kids kind of teach themselves. I think our teachers really understand the challenge in front of them, I can speak from my experience as a principal. We have had opportunities to have all 3 science classes one year at Santa Teresa High School. We offer that to kids. One year you have several kids sign up for one subject and not another subject. So I think it really varies on the teacher commitment and the interest of the students. I think that's my best way I can answer that.
So on that note, on the interest of the student, I know that it said about open enrollment or something to that effect. What are we doing? I specifically will speak about Gadsden High School. I know there was maybe I'll say one class that I know of that there was a high number. So what is the ratio, first of all, for AP classes?
Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Dempsey, there's no particular ratio.
Okay.
It's whatever the state max load for teachers is. I don't have that
So it's the
information off the top
same?
of my head, so it's the same, but there's not
Okay.
anything different than a regular class.
All right, so then when are we having more student interest than what is available currently? It seems like there was one specific class that was happening. And so unfortunately, it seems that there was ways to maybe move students out of that class when they really wanted to remain there. So I have an issue with that. You know, if that's happening, what are we doing to help with that issue?
Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Dempsey, obviously I can't speak to that particular situation at Gadsden High School, but I'd be happy to speak, with Mrs. Legadat about that, to get a little more context of what was occurring there, because again, with any class, AP or not, your goal as a teacher should be to drive kids out of class. It should be to support them to be successful, and if to an extent, sometimes students are like, wait, this right? I wanted this challenge, and someone comes and say, this is actually, I like this teacher, I like this individual, I like this person as a student, but this is too much time commitment for me because of my other commitments, athletics, job and stuff. So we want to support them, but we don't want to get them so far in where they start feeling unsuccessful. So it's that balance of responding to what that student needs, right? You can stay here, we'll assist you, but understand this is the commitment, I guess is a way I would describe that.
So on that, when the teachers, if that is the case, maybe this is an isolated incident, but if that's the case, what are we doing as a district to be able to, I guess, motivate teachers to become AP teachers? And then the second one is, when the student really wants to stay in that class, and I get it, there is a commitment, right? And so also with that, what are we doing to support the parent and the student so that they know that there's this importance when there's this commitment, and it's not at the traditional classroom, right? I mean, more is expected of you. So what are we doing as a district? I know that in other districts, what they do, they even hold like Saturday days where they're gonna, talk to the parent, where they're specifically tell them what's expected of them. So are we currently, I don't believe there's anything currently, but are we looking into perhaps bringing something like that into the district?
Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Dempsey, to your first question, how do we encourage teachers to become AP teachers? It is, whether you want to teach AP or not, it is, because the state of New Mexico pays for it, it's free, wonderful professional development in the summer that is going to help you be a better teacher, even if you decide you don't want to be an AP teacher. So I've worked with principals that say, hey, we've got one person certified in, one person that's been in the AP summer student history. You know what, let's try to get a couple more teachers up there this summer. That way we can, support that person in becoming a better U.S. history teacher in general, while at the same time providing other teachers who can also teach additional sections of AP U.S. history if it becomes available. So we're really encouraging them for professional development and to better themselves. As for that second question, that is definitely in my experience and conversations with Mrs. Clark, that summer kind of parent institute, weekend parent institute for students and parents to understand what's going on. That's a missing cohesive element district wide. That is certainly part of something that Mrs. Clark has put in that 5-year plan, because it's those kind of practices that solidify and strengthen your program. So those things aren't in place district wide right now. I know some of those happen kind of happenstance, at a campus or with just this AP teacher over at this school, and so that's something that needs improvement.
And on that, let's see. You mentioned the Summer Institute and then the PLTW, right? And so, do the teachers need to attend every summer, or is it they get the training one summer and now they understand what the expectations are? How is that monitored also? Who keeps who has been part of this, and if not, to remind them you need to be, again, it's professional development there, right? This is for growth. Now, is that being, is there a record of that they are doing these?
Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Dempsey. So that's an excellent question I can ask Ms. Clark. I don't know how often the recommended kind of revisit to a summer institute is. I know that in the past, College Board will make announcements that they'll say, "Hey, there's been a significant revision to the AP U.S. History curriculum.
Mm-hmm.
We recommend everybody start reattending the Summer Institute to gather information." As for a record, this is a conversation I had with Ms. Clark earlier this week. One, I know the previous director of secondary used to collect the certificates every year, keep them in a file. And so our principals are pretty good at having that. Usually it's run through a counselor, and they keep a copy of the certificates when a teacher attends. So, I have my record here from a couple of schools on, when they last attended. Most of these here are 21, 22, 20, 2019, 2022, 2020. There's a 2009 here. So most of our folks that on these lists that I have are relatively recent. But I don't know the recommended, revisit cycle, and I think that's a good thing to investigate.
Great. And so the course audits. I did have this question that was brought up to my attention. What is the timeline for them to submit for a course syllabus to College Board?
Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Dempsey, I'm going to not be able to give you an exact correct answer.
Okay.
But if I recall from when I would approve them, they would start asking for them in the spring, and you had to have it done by I want to say the end of the first semester. But I'm not exactly sure if that's true, because they give you a chance to submit it and then resubmit it if it's not good. So you have a resubmission window for revision. I think it's up until the first semester. That's an excellent question for Mrs. Clark. I can double check on that. I don't have on me.
Okay, great. So I think that's important, right? And before even starting to teach that course, to be prepared, right? Because sometimes, I mean, what good would it do if the students start and you're not prepared and don't have that audit already cleared? Let's see, what other question? That one, sorry. I have a few here. Okay, so this one, I think this one is extremely important. The platform that is for curriculum that is being used here in the district. I understand, and forgive me because I'm not very acquainted with this, but I was told that there's like a Springboard recommended curriculum through College Board. So are we using that, or are we using our own, and the teachers are creating their own lessons? Are they utilizing this? Perhaps you won't have that answer.
So Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Dempsey, I'm a little bit familiar with Springboard, and oftentimes Springboard is adopted as the general ELA curriculum for the whole school. That's not our adopted curriculum that we adopted a few years ago. But over the last 2 years, as I mentioned briefly in the slide there, the College Board did open up what they called AP Classroom, where they're housing all of their, all the resources for students and teachers. But I can certainly, and I'd be happy to try to get a little more detail from you. So, because Springboard typically ties to ELA only. And so I'd be definitely interested, if you have more information, you can share with me later, so I can figure out maybe who's asking for that need, and if they feel the need is the Springboard curriculum and something else is available that aligns with it better, so we can make sure we get that more aligned thing for them.
Right, okay, great. And I guess my last question would be, for this specific AP courses, do the campuses have a counselor assigned to assist, once again, students and parents with any questions that they might have, or is it just the counselor that is assigned to your student, they would be acquainted with this, or is there specific?
Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Dempsey, I can't speak definitively for all campuses on that either. However, I know, and I'd have to check with all 3 of the comprehensive high schools, but there's typically a counselor that takes the lead on organizing test collection, updating folks, all those fees. However, I know that it's the responsibility of all the counselors to have the basic information, and of course, refer to their colleague that is the expert. Just like oftentimes with administrators, duties are divided up between them, but there's always the principal that can be the go-to person for everything. So, but I can check on that division too. And I would also say to that point, I'll check with Ms. Clark on that to see if she has that written in her. I can't remember if that was something we wrote into the 5-year plan as well, because there's a lot of programmatic structural things that are in there.
Mr. Cano, Ms. Murillo? No? Okay, my turn. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
So, let's see. Just clarify, because I brought up your presentation, so I went through it real quick, so make sure I'm not asking something that you had already answered. So, one question is, so there's no such thing as honors anymore? Like that went away, or?
Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Dempsey, so we did phase out honors over time. I think we might have a couple of little things dangling out there, but the main reason was we really wanted to have a more unified standard for what that was. So we really try to trend towards the AP as being that particular standard.
Okay. And then the next question is, because I didn't see it in the presentation. So as it is a graduation requirement that you either take, and I learned this in parent-teacher conference, so I'm just making sure, that you take an AP course or an online course, and what else am I missing?
Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Dempsey, the specific wording is AP honors, dual credit, or distance learning course. Those are the four things there. However, I do believe there's been a lot of talk in the LASC meetings about the changing of graduation requirements, and that particular requirement is a hot button issue. That one, I think, if they make adjustments, I kind of think that one's going by the wayside for sure. Though I can appreciate the legislature's intention on making sure that all of our students had the opportunity to take a advanced level or college preparation course.
Okay. And then Ms. Rodriguez was asking earlier about the springboard. So is that like a curriculum?
Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Dempsey, yes, it is, because I'm recalling back to my time as a campus administrator. We did have a minute there where we had some springboard material, and I'm having a hard time. I know it was ELA. I'm having a hard time in the context of which it came to campus. So I'm gonna have to get more information. On that. Okay. So any teacher that's interested in the possibly teaching an AP course has to attend the Summer Institute. How long is that institute, and is it like, where is it? Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Dempsey, and I believe they happen in the summer. They're typically, the principal colleagues can tell me, they 3 days or 5 days? 5 days. 5 days. They're 5 days, and they typically take place at NMSU, UNM, Highlands are where they take place. Those are the free ones that our folks can attend to. New Mexico, the PED in the past, the PED has paid everything for them. And on occasion, they have them here at UTEP, and Mrs. Clark has mentioned that she has worked in the past to try to get PED to pay for ones at UTEP that are not offered elsewhere in our state, and the information to register for those typically comes out about April is when it comes out to register for those. Okay,
which leads me to the following question. So if I'm interested, I go get trained for 5 days, and then if I decide that this is like way too much,
yeah,
but at least it's going to help me be a better teacher when I go back in the
right,
fall. But then what curriculum then, if I guess, because obviously you've got AP classes that are math, science, and ELA. So then, I guess for like, what are they using to teach? And I guess that's an area of concern for me, because definitely we want our kids to be competitive and make sure that they're getting the same content, if you will, and that they are in fact prepared so that when they do take those tests that they're successful.
Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Dempsey, for all the AP courses that are offered, publishers offer AP-specific versions of their material for that. That's a clarifying point there that I left out there for with Mrs. Rodriguez's question, because to your question about, hey, if their syllabus hasn't been approved yet, how do they get started? They should have access to the AP books and content. But without getting too far in the weeds, like right now, and the secondary principals are going to groan when I say this, but it's time to start making the master schedule for next year. Okay, so right now is the time that we try to plan what are the offerings that we want at all of our schools next year, and so that's when we put on the plate. Here are the offerings that we want. Here are the teachers that have expressed interest in doing this. I as a principal have observed, have the classroom skills to do this, and then we really say, hey, would you want to teach, AP stats? If the teacher says yes, then what we have to do is we actually have to gather course requests for the AP stats class before the Summer Institute occurs. So in October, we're saying we want AP stats at Gadsden High School. Okay, we need to find a teacher that has the skill set to do that. Then we have to put on our course request when y'all go to the advisory meetings in February, AP stats at Gadsden High School, and then kids will say how many kids want this, and then we'll take that number. Okay, typically our handbook says if a class has less than 15 course requests, it's very typical that class doesn't make. So then we say, okay, we got 20 kids that want to take that class. All right, I can fit this math class with the rest of my math sections, right, to cover my regular math, and then I've got to try to get that individual over to the AP Summer Institute. Okay, that's typically how that works. And of course, you can do all that work with that teacher. Then sometimes the teacher says, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and retire. You have all these kids that have signed up for AP stats. As a principal, you try if you can not to cancel that class. So then you go and find somebody else. Can you teach AP? I'd love to teach AP stats, but you know what? I'm going to be on vacation for the institute days because it's not the teacher's fault. And so then we got to support them to submit their syllabus, access the content, get in touch with some of these online resources, and then have them attend the institute the following summer. So there are some timing things with that, and so that has an impact on scheduling.
Okay, which leads me, let me see. So then, who ultimately decides then what classes are offered on the campus? And so again, like, have we really done a survey, or like, how do we decide? Do we ask kids? How do we decide what we're gonna offer? And then, I guess my other question tied to that is, if we don't have the required number to even begin the class, or maybe we don't even have the teacher, remind me the name of our online school.
Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Dempsey. Ultimately, the person who decides what classes are offered on campus is the principal of the school. And so oftentimes, you're looking for two things. You're looking for, a teacher that has that necessary skill set. Obviously, you've got to make sure if you're going to teach 2 classes of AP stats, that doesn't turn your Algebra 1 classes into 35 apiece. That's a calculation in the situation as well. I think we leave it up to the principals to survey and figure out what their kids are asking for and wanting for. Oftentimes our district leadership gives feedback to us. And then what was the second part of your question? I totally spaced it, I'm sorry.
Okay, so then come now.
Come now.
Come now, we're gonna.
Adventum, online.
Well, before we go to Adventum.
Yes, ma'am.
So sorry,
That's
sorry,
okay.
Mr. Walker.
That's okay.
So like now, so I would be expecting, or like if I ask my son, hey, Chaparral High School, have you received a survey of what interests you, or at Gadsden, whatever, when is that gonna occur so that they can get that feedback?
Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent, not quite yet, right? I have to sit down with the principals, and I have to sit down with the principals because we've gotten some feedback from kids about some other stuff. We have to sit down with the principals and say, what does your staffing look like? how is this going? And then they kind of really have to lay out, hey, I'm going to go out, I'm going to ask this, I'm going to ask that. This is what I've heard. So we have to have those discussions first. That's what I mean. That's the first step in the scheduling process. So typically, surveys out to kids. What do you want to take? What are you interested in? Those happen sometimes as late as December, early January. But really start, to be truthful, Ms. Flores, you're really starting with your teachers on the skill level and the interest in, and what they're able to teach. And again, making sure you have enough teachers to teach all your sections. And then, of course, as you mentioned, Edmentum, they do offer some AP classes online. They did acquire another, I can't remember what it's called, another virtual school. So right now it's one company, 2 schools. They're going to be combining them together. That other one, I can't remember the name of it. I went to a conference this summer. They're combining them together. And so we need to do a better job for our kids that the classes don't make. We need to do a better job this coming school year in making sure that those options are put out on the table for them.
Okay, and then, so you answered my questions, because I was gonna ask you, hey, well, if the class doesn't happen, then if I'm a student and I want to take this particular, does Edmentum have it so that I could take it? So the answer is yes. No.
Madam President, members of the Board Superintendent, some courses, because they have to follow the same requirements of the approved syllabus. They follow the same requirements.
Now, here's another one. I'm just curious. Is there, what am I trying to ask? Is there like a national virtual school where like kids can have access to not that they're going to take the 38 courses, but why, if there's something that they really, really want from those 38 courses, is that a possibility?
Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Dempsey, my experience is, that we look towards, a variety of different vendors. Edmentum, that's the one we're partnered with now. Doesn't mean there's not other ones. The state has in the past provided to us as principals through their department. Something in Florida, something somewhere else, but that ends up being a hit and miss thing on a partnership they have. But most certainly, I think that's a valid point of research to go and do, because 38 courses seems like a lot, but it's not really a lot to try to see if we can give kids access to.
Okay, and then my let me see. Do those AP, because I don't think I took AP courses, I don't know what I took, but so like that AP class would replace because you know how you have to have 4 English? Does that cover one of the 4, or how does that work?
Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Dempsey, so on the NMPED website, it spells out what particular AP courses count as replacement for regular courses, and typically most of your social studies and English and science courses, your cores, they typically count for in replacement of oftentimes the core requirement. However, it is highly recommended by AP that AP Physics, AP Biology, AP Chemistry is not the initial chemistry class the student takes. Okay. It's highly recommended in those courses that you take a chemistry class first and then an AP Chem and so forth.
Okay, and then my last question is regarding grading. The same expectation of our AP teachers within our district is to grade standards-based grading, correct?
Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Dempsey, absolutely, absolutely.
Okay, I think that concludes my questions. So thank you, sir. Anybody else? No? Okay, thank you, Mr. DeVoe.
Thank you, you're welcome.
Okay, and our last discussion item is item 10E, Employee Return to Work Policy Regulations. Superintendent Dempsey.
Madam President, board members, Ms. Chavez is going to help us with this item.
Good evening, Board President Salazar Flores, members of the board, and Superintendent Dempsey. Unfortunately, Ms. Estrella Burciaga was unable to attend today. But I do bring forth to you the discussion item of employee return to work policy regulation onboarding procedures that has been discussed with you in the last 2 board meetings. We received no input or modifications. We will proceed with the onboarding procedures as previously presented and discussed with you. Please know that the new leadership set forth by Ms. Burciaga in Human Resources, we have been able to streamline processes, and this is not going to be any exception, okay? And just as a reminder, with any new implementation or transition of a process, modifications may be necessary to meet the needs of the district or the department. So with that, I stand for any questions.
Questions, comments, concerns for Ms. Chavez?
Yeah, Madam President, board members, so I think what we're, after last board meeting, I think what we have come to realize is we're not sure we're at the stage to write a regulation or a policy on this. We feel like let's focus on our onboarding and hiring practices, and let's be thoughtful through those processes to ensure that we can hire the very best candidate for our students. And I think with Ms. Burciaga and Ms. Chavez and their onboarding practices and hiring practices, I think the concerns that were addressed, I really believe that they understand those concerns and will build in practices that ensure that we don't see any abuse of it. I think that idea of abuse and quote unquote saving positions, that's something that I'm concerned about and watchful of, and I know that Ms. Chavez and Ms. Burciaga are as well. And so we'll keep the board posted on that. But right now, I think after exploring this, I think we need a little bit more time through this process to make sure we understand it. And I would also might even suggest it wouldn't be surprising to me if we don't see modifications to some of these return to work practices during the legislative session, which then invokes another change for us. So our recommendation at this point is let's focus on those hiring practices and move forward in that direction.
Any questions, comments, or concerns? I do want to make a comment, and so I'm, because when you mentioned no feedback, no words were given to you all, because I want well, as far as I didn't provide anything, is because that is a very huge task, which I don't even pretend to even know what in the world to say. And while I will restate my personal opinion only, is that, I was talking to Superintendent Dempsey, and I was sharing that, what was hard is trying to put in words what I would love to see. But it is hard because, yes, I would like to see where individuals who do sit out the 90 days who want to come back to being an educator, that they go and give their service to another school, bless some other PLC, right, to avoid that perception, right? But then I do want to share with the public is I totally get in the previous presentations, Ms. Burciaga and Mr. Dempsey alluding that, yeah, we can put something in words. We even with the the advice of legal counsel. But I get it. We would be shooting ourselves in the foot because then, I was sharing that there's seasons of time when there's certain positions where there's not individuals going. Like for right now, that legislation was passed because right now we're currently living in the season of time that unfortunately people don't want to be teachers. So that is a way to assist people getting individuals into the classroom. So in the future, we don't know what season we're going to be facing, whether we're lacking maybe cafeteria workers, custodian, whatever the case may be, electricians, we just don't know what the future holds. So I get it why it's, probably not a good idea to put something written. What I will say is that I'm excited that, with these onboarding procedures, practices, I think that's going to help hopefully prevent unethical practices, which is what I'm going to call it. I was told Mr. Dempsey, funny business, but I think the better word is unethical practices. When it comes to HR hiring practices. So that's awesome that we're going to begin to implement these procedures, these practices. I just want to clarify, I believe bullet number 2 is referring to the fact that it says all job vacancies will be posted and advertised on Fridays and removed 2 weeks from postings on Mondays. So that's the 10-day post, correct?
That is a 10-day post, but please, that's why I said that some of these ones will get modified or the procedures may be modified. We have to be really careful if there is 2 SPED teachers that are applied for a position. We're not going to ask the principal, and I hope that you agree, that to hold off for 10 days until the posting closed in order for them to interview when the need is immediate. So those are part of the hard-to-fill positions that Ms. Burciaga was trying to go ahead and explain during the last couple of board meetings. So yes, the position will be advertised on a Monday. It will be removed 2 weeks from that date. If there's no applicants at that time, then we can go ahead and re-advertise with a fresh position or fresh job number, and then they know that that position hasn't been there for more than what it's been on now. Okay? But just know that, you know, there's hard to fill positions. We're just not going to be able to go ahead and say, hey, you know, hold off on hiring or interviewing these SPED teachers until that posting is closed. I just don't foresee, and I hope that you do see that as well.
Okay. So with that being said, how I'm just curious, how many applicants, is there such a thing or a rule, how many applicants are needed in order to conduct an interview?
There's not. It all depends on the applicant pool that we actually have, and as soon as the principals see that need, principals interview on day 1. So if they're in need and they've been without a SPED teacher for a couple of weeks, for a month or so, they're going to go ahead and interview the first person that applies for that position. Okay? There is no rule, there is no guideline that we have currently that says we have to have up to 2 people, 3 people, 4 people, or 4 applicants before we can go ahead and interview.
Okay. So then, what I'm excited about those 10 days too is that it also will give, I guess, whoever future applicants that are interested in coming to our district, it gives them a time frame.
It does.
You know, and so that way because applying online, I said I was going to apply just to be curious, and maybe I need to follow through with that, just to experience what does it entail and see how long it takes, because in my past experience with other places, it's like it takes hours to get your online application through. So with that, that way it gives applicants that 10-day window to get their stuff together. And so any future applicants we wanted to come to what did I say? To Gadsden, right? And, you know, start your application, because it does take a couple of hours. And then whenever you see a job that you meet the minimal qualifications, then you just, I'm assuming the system just allows you to like click, you know?
It does.
Okay.
It allows us to go ahead and just click, just to remove it from the district website, not to close it out.
Okay.
Okay?
No.
But just know and be reassured that with Ms. Burciaga in Human Resources, like I said, we've had opportunity to go ahead and streamline some of the processes. This is not going to be an exception. It'll be followed through with what is written. And like I said, with any new process or anything like that, modifications will need to be made, just because we just don't know that uncertainty in regards to, well, what are we going to have this week? What are we going to have next week in regards to open positions or vacancies?
Okay. I'm going to say I agree to some extent.
Okay.
Because I'm already thinking, well, why if I want to be unethical? And which I hope is not the case. And I have a 5th grade opening, if you will, and for special education, which is a high needs, it is. And then even bilingual, ¿verdad? Make it
as well.
worse.
Yes, please.
So, but why if I want my friend Claudia to get it. So knowing that, you know, there's gonna be modifications, you know, why if there's somebody who is way better than my friend Claudia and does, you know, you know, but then because of that, I'm going to, I'm gonna hire you just because. So is there room for that or no?
Yeah, please know that the modifications that I'm talking about is anything in regards to procedure. Say, for example, we're saying that the interview can request how to repost that vacancy. Well, you know, if they request it on a Wednesday, are we going to go ahead and wait all the way till Monday to go ahead and advertise it, or to that Friday to advertise it? Or if that Monday they ask for it and it's not advertised to Monday, we will continue to work on this, but that's the type of modifications, not in regards to how our practice will be in regards to interviewing, what we need, the screening sheets, all the interview packets in order to, because if we have any questions in regards to those on ethical practice, we will have the supporting documentation. When we interviewed, how many were interviewed? Did all of those individuals apply? Were they screened? Were they not screened? Just those processes is what I'm saying. Like with any new procedure that's going to be taking place, some modifications may be made, but not in regards to how they conduct the interviews and how, yes,
Okay.
yes, ma'am.
Okay, no, it makes sense. And then, not tonight, Ms. Chavez, but I was thinking, Mr. Dempsey, if it's okay to request, or like, I'd like to be educated, you know, I don't know if in here or in a workshop or something, or even here, how do we score applicants? I'm very curious when it comes to that, because I've sat as somebody being interviewed, and then I've also sat as somebody interviewing as part of a committee. And, you know, here and where I currently work, and, you know, when here a couple of years ago, you know, so I'm just curious, because I never experienced where, you know, we interview the person, and then we all make sure that no unethical practices are occurring. Like, I'm just curious, once we finish interviewing the pool of applicants, is that, or do we score in front of each other, or is that packet given to HR and then HR tabulates the scores? Like, and I'm just interested in what that procedure is, just for clarity, just for transparency.
Right,
We have changed that process, and Mr. Dempsey can go ahead and speak more of that. Because
Well, and here's what I would add, Ms. Chavez, thank you, and Madam President, board members. What I would say to that is, you know, those are the kind of processes that we're walking through that says, let's make sure that as these committee members walk away, they feel confident in what they scored. But I'll also remind the board that the biggest problem we're having right now is honoring the confidentiality agreement, that we don't talk about what happens in that committee. That's in part what's causing some of the problems. And you know, that is something that needs to be addressed. But, you know, the experience I've had is we used a forced rank process, and we can go through what that looks like. And that each candidate you interview, you read how you scored them aloud. And everybody knows in the committee. Everybody knows how I scored each person, and they know how the totals ended up. And then, you know, there's not what doesn't happen, and what we you know, I think is detrimental to the process, is after each candidate, we kind of combine this conversation and say, well, what did you think about this person? What did you think about that person? That leads to probably some spaces that we want to stay away from.
So basically what it sounds like is the person comes into an interview for whatever position, and then everybody scores that individual, and then everybody just says the score, but there's obviously no deliberation for influence to occur. And then
at the end, so after the last candidate, then we read our scores for each candidate.
Okay, and somebody's like the score taker.
Right, and so you typically are having a facilitator who they just facilitate the process, and they write down those numbers, and everybody knows, every committee member that participated knows who came out as the highest ranking person. So they should be leaving with a good sense of credibility and transparency. But again, what gets said outside, there's some factors we can't control, but we really need those individuals who participate on those committees to honor that confidentiality agreement, not because we have anything to hide, but because we don't want to hurt anyone who maybe was ranked 2 or 3, and then they feel like, what's the point? I didn't get it, right? That's what's hard about an interview process. 4 or 5 people are going to interview. One person's going to be happy at the end of the day. No, you're never going to get the majority in those situations happy. And so that's what gets to be a challenge sometimes. But I think we've on a good start to ensuring the credibility of that process. I don't advertise this, but there have been, right now I can think of 3 times that Ms. Chavez and she's probably brought something to my attention, and we've stopped processes and made them restart because we saw something that just didn't look right. And I'm not saying they were doing anything wrong. I'm just saying, wait a minute, this doesn't look good. This doesn't look fair. Stop, restart this. And, sometimes it was just, I want to believe those were just kind of honest mistakes. But there is oversight in those processes. Because I didn't know about them. She would bring them to me and say, Mr. Dempsey, let me show you what I think, and here's my perception that worries me. So we would stop those processes. So.
And I'll conclude with this, because, you can go on, and I can go on and on. How do you, I guess, one of the other things is, how in the world do you calibrate? And what I mean by calibrate is, like, I've sat in on interviews many times, but we never sat and said, okay, this is what we're going, this is the answer. Because there's no such thing. Or this is what we want to hear. And I guess where it could be subjective is, it could be the 4 of us, and if there's a question having to do with special education, she's the expert, because she's a veteran, has taught special education. I've only done general ed, et cetera, and so then when I'm scoring this individual who is applying maybe for special education job, like, I might not even have the background, and she does, and I guess what I'm trying to say is, because she's got that background, she really knows what to listen for. I don't have the background, so I'm just like, I guess it sounds good, So, like, I've always been curious, like how do you calibrate so that you're not being subjective, because there should be no. Does that make sense? What I'm trying to say?
Madam President and board members, it does, but I'm going to tell you, to eliminate that from the hiring process, that's an impossible task. What I would say the best candidates, and I think of one right off the top of my head, that in a pretty large committee with parents, teachers, administrators, was able to answer the question and touch each of those members. So the answer included part for parents, part for administrators, and part for teachers. That was a fabulous answer. That's the one that really hit the best. And that was an example of taking maybe a SPED-related question, but relating it to the administrator, relating it to a parent, and relating it to a teacher. That's how I judged that answer. Like, wow, that got a really high mark for me. So.
From your remarks, sir, I guess I conclude that another good practice would be your committees, that especially, for anything that you have a balanced representation. And so with that, is that occurring? Is there going to be standard protocol that if I'm the principal of, whatever school, I'm not just, hey, Avila, come here. And then just randomly, like, we're putting thought into it, right?
Yes, and that'll be part of the continuation of these procedures that we'll be writing out and stuff. But please know that it is a variety of individuals that are asked to be in the committee. Okay. And again, we're streamlining some of those processes. And I do hope that within the next couple of months, you'll be able to go ahead and see that or view it when you go and visit some of the school sites to say, hey, you know what, this is a new hire. Wow, excellent, you know, and you'll be noticing that more and more.
Okay. So as you're streamlining these processes, I guess there will also be training involved to supervisors.
Oh, definitely.
Okay, awesome.
Definitely.
Any further questions, comments? Ms. Murillo?
I have two questions, and this is a question that keeps coming up. One, do the candidates sign a waiver before the interview about if you know someone from the district? Do you know anybody from the committee? And I think if you're related with someone, because that's what I get asked in my interviews with the state. That's the first thing. And then the second one is the disclosure waiver, which is you are not allowed to tell anybody that you're gonna have that that interview at a certain time. Only if your working hours, I guess your supervisor, and right, like it's very confidential. And then the third one, how is a committee selected?
Okay. To your first question, the only thing that we have in place right now is within our application. So the individual does sign that they understand that, hey, do you have a family member that works for Gadsden Independent School District? They'll either list that or they won't list that. It's up to the individual that's applying. Sometimes we're not aware until way after the fact that it is a related family member. At that time, we bring it to the attention, and then we proceed as how we need to go ahead and do. In regards to your second question, no, there is nothing in place right now to say, Ms. Murillo, we want you on the committee for this interview, but I need for you to go ahead and sign a waiver stating you will not disclose any information regarding when, where, and what position we're actually interviewed. No. The third question in regards to the selection of the committee, if it's a principal campus level, the principal designates their committee members. If it's a district, then the directors or superintendent will designate, and not really designate, he's asking for, or the directors and Mr. Dempsey are asking for input. They want parents, so they want community members. I think the last one that we had, we asked for a business owner, if I'm not mistaken, on there. So it just all depends on the position that we're actually interviewing for, what the committee members will look like.
And one last question. So as board members, right, we know people in the community, and let's just say that there are interviews coming up, right? We know because people are telling us, hey, there's this interview coming up. I'm gonna put myself in that, and because it happened to me in the past, right? I'm very involved in the community, so it's very hard to not say that I don't know almost everybody in the school system, right? So when I know it's kind of conflict of interest, but at the same time, it's hard because it's such a small town that you really don't have options. I guess it's not a question, it's more like, let's be thoughtful, because my grandma always says, small town, big hell. And everybody talks, and it's loud. You know, it's very loud, and it's really hard to hide interviews and little things that are happening out there. So I feel like our job is to bring all this to our superintendent for transparency, and to make sure that we are expressing concerns that are out there, and to protect the community, to protect our teachers and our principals. So I think when I read all this, and I didn't know how the committee works, that's why I wanted to know how do you guys select that. But now that I know, another point that we can touch later on. But just wanted to throw out there that.
But just always know that any questions in regards to interviewing, who was selected, anything that has to do with any of that, we really appreciate you just referring them back either to superintendent or human resources, we'll be able to go ahead and answer those questions and provide them a lot of information that they may or may not get from a board member.
She brought something that I have to ask this. So then what's the, if, you know, when you apply and there's the clause, are you related to somebody? I mean, you even ask, are you related to a board member? Because definitely, you know, if my sister was going to, I mean, it can't happen because I'm sitting on the board unless those individuals were already employees and then after the fact, right? But then it sounds like that clause, are you related to somebody in the district? It's basically like they're volunteering information, it's not mandated, right?
That is correct.
Okay.
That is
so
correct.
Then,
we just, what we do and what we look at it, and I don't mean to interrupt you, Board President, what we do is that once we see that they're related to a family member on there, we just ensure that they're not part of the reference, okay? We can't discourage this. We welcome anybody to apply for our district. Anytime, right now, we want them to go ahead and apply. That's the only thing that we look at, just to ensure that that person that they're related to is not part of their reference.
or a immediate supervisor, maybe?
No,
Madam
but-
President, board members, the difference, and thank you, Ms.
Yes,
Chavez,
sir. Thank
I think here's the difference, though, and keep this in mind.
Mhm.
Anytime any one of us applies for a position and we falsify information, that's grounds for termination. So if you choose, if you know you're related to someone and you choose to not disclose that and that question's asked, you falsified information. And that could be grounds for disclosure, or for termination, right? So, you know, and obviously we're, without a doubt, watching for supervisory type concerns. But we just really ask people, just disclose it. I mean, it's common in the Southwest. I mean, families are gonna be related. We just need that disclosure so we know they're not your immediate supervisor, they're not on your references, they're not on your committee, those type of things. And you know, unfortunately, we are subject to what information they give us. But if we find out, and you know, like was just said, communities talk. You fill out an application, you chose not to disclose this. That could be grounds for termination.
So then it is okay, no, and because the world is small, then we need, and there's high needs areas.
Yes.
So what I'm hearing you say, sir, is that if I do not disclose that I am the sister to kindergarten teacher at X school because, you know, because I'm thinking they're not gonna hire me because I'm her sister, it's okay to say I'm her sister and it's not gonna prevent me from attaining that job at the same school as my sister, because obviously you know, they might not even pick me based on how I perform, you know, in the interview, so it's okay.
Yes,
Okay.
and like Mr. Dempsey said, when you're signing or you're acknowledging down at the bottom, it does say that you're attesting to that all the information that you have provided in the application is true and correct to the best of your knowledge. So that's where Mr. Dempsey did say, you know, we do find afterwards, and then it is grounds for termination.
Okay. Any further questions, comments for Ms. Chavez? I don't believe so. Thank you so
Thank
much for your
you.
presentation.
Thank you.
Okay, with that being said, we come to item 11, to adjourn. Do I hear a motion?
Madam President, I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Mr. Cano has made a motion to adjourn. Superintendent Dempsey?
So recommend.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? The ayes have it. We are now adjourned. Thank you. Have a good night. Be safe.